I wanted a peaceful college life at Silverbrook. Instead, every hot girl on campus started simping over me, and the first one had me pinned against a wall before I could escape. Serena Halston was my 19-year-old best friend of almost 3 years and Silverbrook's reigning archery champion. She shoved my head into her lap, told me she loved me, and asked me to be her boyfriend. So I refused by claiming I was already in love with Adeline, the 20-year-old campus queen standing nearby. I had one rule: no dating, because I could protect a friendship, but I didn't trust myself to survive another kind of loss. That lie put 3 women on a collision course and turned my quiet year into a romantic war. I was Declan Avery, Silverbrook's 19-year-old student body vice president, and I had built my routine around avoiding exactly this. To understand why I picked the one woman least likely to stay outside the blast zone, go back 10 minutes. Serena's signed love letter had brought me to a secluded walkway behind the library. I kept my circle small because closeness could disappear without warning. Serena knew that, knew every ugly version of me, and still stood there bending the pink envelope while fighting panic. I asked why she had summoned me like a suspect. Serena called me an idiot, grabbed my collar and forced me down until I could no longer pretend the confession was a joke. She asked whether I had ever seen her as a woman and whether our years together meant anything. Her voice shook because the archery champion could face a final without blinking, yet asking me for love had her fighting for breath. I told her our friendship mattered. Serena heard friendship and understood the answer, but she pressed me harder because surrendering early felt worse. The rule was simple: a cowardly dodge could cost my closest friend. Serena could also hit a distant target while I missed laundry baskets, so honesty came with physical pressure. I built the safest lie I could find. I would claim I already liked someone else. Serena would call me unlucky, and we would pretend this had never happened. Then a guy near the fountain confessed to a girl. She gave him a sympathetic smile and announced that she already liked someone else. Serena turned her head toward me. My escape line had just been demonstrated in public like a cheap magic trick. From that day on, Serena was the archery menace. She tightened her grip and ordered, "Go ahead, Declan, tell me who she is." I could have admitted I was scared. Instead, I looked across the fountain, found the most admired woman at Silverbrook, and used her as human cover. I pointed at Adeline. Adeline was the black-haired literature club president every guy on campus had either confessed to or planned to confess to. I barely knew her, which made the lie feel safe for 4 glorious seconds. "I like Adeline," I told Serena. "That's why I can't date you." Serena studied my face and saw the rot immediately. Her sadness showed for 1 second before anger covered it. She released my collar and wiped her eyes. "Fine, but I'll make you fall for me anyway, and I'll confess every day until you stop lying." Then she promised to collect me outside my apartment the next morning. My escape plan produced its first result. 1 confession turned into a subscription service. What rejection comes with automatic renewal? Across the fountain, Adeline heard her name. Serena marched toward her while Adeline's rejected admirer watched 2 beautiful women begin discussing me. He entered as a romantic lead and left as background furniture. Serena pointed at me without turning around. "Run now, Declan, because tomorrow I'm collecting you." So I ran before she improved the threat. That evening, I walked into the student body president's overtime trap in the student government office. She was 20, my direct superior, and the most elegant troublemaker on campus. Her white hair, sharp eyes, and fitted dress made the office feel smaller. The president slid coffee across the desk and called it my reward for staying late. I reminded her that she had assigned the work. She leaned closer and explained that creating suffering didn't prevent her from rewarding survival. She called me Little Bunny, treated herself like the hunter, and turned ordinary tasks into flirtatious hostage negotiations. I started calling her the White Fox. Then the White Fox pulled a love letter from her desk and asked whether I would help reject the latest admirer. Before I answered, a nervous student entered holding flowers. She wrapped both arms around me, pressed her cheek against my shoulder, and looked at him like he had interrupted something private. The admirer's face collapsed, his flowers lowered, and he apologized to me before backing out. The office assistant quietly moved the remaining love letters away. The White Fox released me. 25 monthly confessions had just made me her reusable shield. I demanded hazard pay, so she tapped the untouched coffee. "Your compensation is cooling," she replied, with shameless consistency I almost respected. When the work ended, the White Fox ordered me to cover my eyes while she slipped out of her college jacket and revealed the fitted dress underneath. I faced the wall, although the mirror beside me was trying to end my survival streak. She caught my eyes drifting and asked whether I had discovered an attraction to the wall. I told her the wall carried fewer traps. She noticed a missing button on my shirt and closed the gap with a silver brooch. Her fingers brushed my chest, and her teasing slowed because the touch mattered more than the repair. I reached for the loose button on the desk. The White Fox took it first. "That's mine," I told her. The White Fox slipped it into her pocket. "You abandoned it, so I rescued it." The White Fox now had a boyfriend shield and a shirt button trophy. Her name was Maeve Sinclair, and she had spent one evening stealing my time, my image, and part of my shirt. Even my shirt was switching sides, so what exactly was left for me to defend? Then I opened the other envelope under my paperwork. Adeline Donnelly had invited me to a cafe the next afternoon. The note named the place and time, nothing else. Serena had reached her, my lie had reached her, and the woman I used as an escape hatch now wanted me alone at a table. Maeve saw Adeline's handwriting before I could hide it and asked which admirer had finally caught my attention. She got jealous before she admitted the feeling to herself, so she disguised it as office curiosity. I folded the note and called it Student Government Business, and Maeve smiled. Of course it is, little bunny. The next afternoon, Adeline's note pulled me to a cafe in Maplehurst, the Oregon city surrounding Silverbrook. She was seated by the window with a book beside her tea, while the barista and two nearby students quietly tracked every movement she made. I apologized before she spoke. Adeline closed the book and explained how my lie reached her. Serena had confronted her beside the fountain, asked whether we were secretly involved, and described my expression during the lie in painful detail. Adeline knew I had borrowed her name because I needed a believable shield. I expected punishment. But Adeline had a practical use for my stupidity. Persistent admirers treated every polite rejection like permission to try again. Campus rumor had already linked us, so Adeline proposed one practical lie: appear together, keep the story consistent, and stop if either of us crossed a boundary. Her admirers might back off, and Serena might finally accept my answer. She gave me 2 days because every delay made the timeline harder to defend. I asked why she trusted me with her reputation. Adeline said I had tried to protect Serena's friendship, even if I had handled the confession like a coward. A coward who cared was safer than an admirer who ignored the word no. The assessment was rude, accurate, and weirdly flattering. Adeline folded her hands, her calm voice hid how long she had rehearsed the offer. "Declan Avery," she said, "will you pretend to be my boyfriend?" There it was. The campus queen had answered my fake crush with a fake relationship. Serena had promised daily pursuit, Maeve had claimed my shirt button, and Adeline was giving me 2 days to make the lie official. I wanted one normal day, and Silverbrook rejected the application. The next morning, Adeline's fake boyfriend proposal was still sitting in my head when Fiona Avery kicked open my bedroom door. Fiona was my 18-year-old sister, a serious ballet dancer, and the self-appointed security department for every woman who came within texting distance of me. She wore cat ears with a maid-style breakfast apron because Fiona believed ordinary sibling harassment lacked presentation value. Then she placed eggs on my desk, demanded my phone, and asked why 3 different women had messaged me before sunrise. I told her privacy was a family value. Fiona informed me that privacy ended when Serena sent 6 angry stickers and Maeve used the words, "my little bunny," in writing. I started calling my sister home security and she already had a case. While stealing my toast, Fiona explained how she handled unwanted admirers. She told them she had a boyfriend, showed them a cropped photo of me, and let their assumptions do the dirty work. I reminded her that using her brother as fake romantic evidence was deeply cursed. Fiona replied that the method worked, which was the only ethical standard she recognized before breakfast. The method was cursed, but the result was useful. A visible relationship could stop people who treated rejection like a negotiation. Adeline's proposal had moved from insane to annoyingly practical. Then, Serena pounded on the apartment door. I looked at Fiona, and Fiona looked at the window. We both knew Serena had promised to collect me, and the archery menace treated promises like court orders, so I climbed out through the fire stairs. Serena was waiting below. She spotted me halfway down, smiled with terrifying warmth, and started running. I hit the sidewalk and made it 6 steps before her shoe caught the back of my leg. Serena kicked me into a hedge, dragged me out by the sleeve, and announced that our first date was starting immediately. I reminded her that I had rejected the relationship. Serena tightened her grip and explained that I had only rejected the title. The outing had already been scheduled. You have to admire the confidence. Fear it, yes, but admire it from a safe distance. Serena hauled me across Maplehurst to a city archery exhibition where several college clubs were competing. She called it a date every time I called it kidnapping, and by the 4th exchange, the registration volunteer believed both versions. The exhibition hall was packed with targets, sponsor banners, and students comparing scores near the practice lanes. Serena's name was already on the champions display, so people noticed when she dragged an unfamiliar man through the entrance. A volunteer asked whether I was her coach. Serena answered that I was her date before I could choose a safer role. At the main hall, Serena saw Garrett Dempsey and instantly hooked both arms around mine. Garrett was the 20-year-old polished captain of a rival college archery team, with perfect hair, expensive gear, and a smile built for people who never checked what happened after he left the room. "Darling," Serena said loudly, "you came all this way for me." I looked at her, and Serena pinched my side harder. So now the woman who hated my fake crush excuse was using me as her own fake boyfriend. Romance at Silverbrook had rules, and every rule existed mainly to humiliate me. Garrett walked over with 2 followers behind him. He greeted Serena like they were old friends, then addressed me with the soft patience people use on a parking attendant blocking a luxury car. He offered to escort Serena home and suggested I enjoy the rest of the exhibition alone. The words sounded polite, but his eyes had already dismissed me. Serena stayed wrapped around my arm, waiting to see whether I would fold. She wanted a shield, but she also wanted proof that I would stand beside her when another man pushed. I told Garrett that Serena could leave with anyone she chose, including nobody. His opinion and mine ranked equally on that decision, which meant neither of us got a vote. Garrett's smile tightened. 1 follower stopped giggling, and Serena's grip changed from performance to genuine satisfaction. Garrett praised my confidence and walked away. Behind him, the rival archers whispered that Serena had never let anyone speak for her before, and at least one student checked my badge to understand why Silverbrook's vice president had appeared in their rivalry. Serena heard them and stood a little closer to me. Garrett's smile had tightened after I refused to disappear on command, and now he needed another way to recover his pride without dirtying his clean public image. While Serena checked the exhibition schedule, she handed me her bag. I carried it toward the seating area and heard 3 women nearby tearing into her. They called her arrogant, violent, and ungrateful for rejecting someone as generous as Garrett. Garrett joined them and performed innocence. He told the women to calm down, then sighed that Serena simply misunderstood his kindness. Every sentence made him sound noble while giving the followers another reason to hate her. A decent man would have shut the attack down. Garrett kept feeding it while pretending his hands were clean. Serena returned before I could challenge him. She noticed my expression, pulled me behind a display wall, and declared that I had earned a reward for accompanying her. The reward was putting on her spare athletic socks. I refused, and Serena lifted her bow case and asked whether I wanted to reconsider under the protection of Maplehurst's strongest archery champion. So I crouched, helped her with the socks, and accepted that my dignity was now event merchandise. Serena laughed until she nearly fell over, then rested her head against my shoulder and thanked me quietly for staying. The joke dropped out of her voice. She had spent the morning acting fearless, but Garrett's presence had put her on edge from the moment we entered. I asked what happened between them. Serena explained that Garrett had deliberately bumped into her during setup the previous afternoon. He caught her arm, leaned close, and flirted as though the collision had earned him access. Serena slapped him hard enough to end the conversation. His pride had been bleeding ever since. Now the followers made sense. Garrett wanted Serena punished while keeping his hands clean, and he wanted me gone because I complicated the stage. Serena closed her eyes on my shoulder and pretended to fall asleep. Her breathing became theatrically even, which would have fooled anyone who had known her for fewer than 947 days. She expected me to carry her. I knew this because Serena had spent the previous week complaining about a romance story where the hero carried the heroine home after she slept on him, so I leaned close until my breath touched her cheek. Serena's fake sleep almost broke. Her fingers curled against the bench, and her entire brain stopped on the possibility that I might kiss her. I waited 1 second, then gently moved her head onto the padded backrest and stood up. Her eyes opened instantly. Serena demanded to know why I had abandoned the scene before the best part. I told her unconscious passengers required prior booking. She threw my bag at me and ordered me to leave. I walked toward the exit, but Garrett's earlier pressure kept scratching at me. He had wanted me away, his followers had been loading themselves with anger, and Serena's staged sleep had handed him the opening he needed. The full plan clicked right there. Garrett would let the women corner Serena, then arrive after the fear had peaked and rescue her from the attack he encouraged. She would be shaken, grateful, and easier to control. He wanted to manufacture the heroic moment Serena had just tried to get from me. From that moment on, Garrett became the fake hero. And seriously, what did he think would happen once I came back? I turned around and ran through the service corridor. On the way, I stopped an exhibition organizer and asked for the hallway camera clip from the previous day. The organizer recognized Serena from the setup report, pulled the footage onto my phone, and went pale when Garrett appeared clearly blocking her path. The clip gave me insurance. Serena was still the reason I ran back. Behind the practice hall, Garrett's blonde fan club captain and 2 followers had Serena against a wall. One had already slapped her. The captain raised her hand for a second strike while telling Serena to apologize for humiliating Garrett. I caught her wrist before the hand landed. The woman spun on me and demanded that I leave their private matter alone. I asked whether Garrett had promised to notice her after she attacked the girl he actually wanted. That hit the exact wound. Her face twisted, and she slapped me with the free hand. Serena shouted my name. She had been trying to protect me even while cornered, and now seeing the bruise on my cheek pushed her fear into rage. I released the fan club captain, stepped between them, and told the 3 women that Garrett had used their jealousy as unpaid labor. The captain called me a liar. The other 2 looked toward the hallway because Garrett had still failed to appear, and that hesitation cracked their certainty. Serena told me to go. Her voice shook, but she wanted the attack focused on her instead of me. So I turned, put one arm behind her knees and lifted her. Serena went silent in my arms. She had spent all morning demanding a romantic carry, and she finally got one while bruised, furious, and trying to send me away. The followers blocked the exit. Then Garrett arrived wearing concern perfectly. He asked what was happening, told everyone to calm down, and moved towards Serena with his hand extended, thrilled that the crisis had landed while I stood there looking reckless enough to blame. I set Serena on a bench and walked straight at him. Garrett warned me against making accusations without proof. He suggested that stress had made Serena misunderstand another harmless situation, then told his followers he would forgive them because emotions were high. Serena asked why he was forgiving women who claimed they acted for him. Garrett told her admiration could make people reckless, and he enjoyed the sentence too much. The fan club captain heard him reduce her loyalty to a convenient emotion, yet she still waited for him to defend her. He never did, even though he had one chance to stop talking. My guy used it to protect the attackers, so I punched him in the face. One hit. Garrett dropped beside an equipment rack, and the polished captain finally looked like the man his behavior had revealed. His fan club captain stared at him instead of me. One of the other women stepped away from Serena and quietly lowered the phone she had been ready to use against us. I photographed Garrett on the floor, then showed him the camera clip from the previous day. The video caught him blocking Serena, grabbing her arm, and refusing to let her pass. I told him the punch was mine, the photograph was mine, and the decision about where the clip went next belonged to Serena. If he kept pretending, the exhibition organizers and half the campus would see exactly how his kindness worked. Garrett's confidence folded, and he apologized to Serena in front of the same followers he had manipulated, and the fan club captain's loyalty died while he spoke. She had attacked another woman for a man who wouldn't even admit he wanted revenge. Serena looked from Garrett to me, then told him the apology was too late. She walked out under her own power and made him watch her choose my side. Afterward, Serena found me on the river steps and pressed a cold soda against my cheek. The slap bruise hurt, my hand hurt, and she was smiling like she had won something larger than the fight. She asked how I saw through Garrett. I explained the pressure to leave, the followers' rehearsed anger, and the timing. A real hero would have stopped the attack before anyone got hurt. Garrett needed the hurt because gratitude was the prize he wanted. Serena stared at the river for a moment. She asked whether I had been scared when I returned. I told her fear and movement could happen together, which was the closest I could get to admitting how hard my heart had hit when I saw her cornered. Serena looked at the bruise she had tried to prevent, then pressed the soda more gently against it. A cyclist passed behind us and recognized Serena from the exhibition. He congratulated her on winning before noticing the mark on her cheek. Serena pointed at me and said I had handled the ugly part. The stranger's respectful nod gave her hero claim a witness outside our little argument. Then she placed the soda in my hand and leaned against me. Garrett wanted to play hero, she said. You came back when I told you to leave, so you're my real hero, Declan. I told her that sounded expensive. Serena hooked one finger through my sleeve and smiled. It is, so take responsibility. I'm following you until you do. That night, Serena's hero claim followed me home through 32 text messages. I was trying to hide them when Fiona came out of the bathroom with a robe on, a towel wrapped around her hair, and the focused expression of a detective who had smelled fresh nonsense. She asked why I was smiling at my phone. I said the screen brightness had changed. Fiona lunged, stole the phone, and discovered Serena calling me her hero, Maeve asking where her little bunny had gone, and Adeline reminding me that her answer deadline was approaching. Home security had found a 3-alarm fire. I grabbed for the phone. Fiona dodged, shoved me onto the couch, and trapped my head on her lap while cleaning one ear with the ruthless concentration she usually saved for ballet rehearsal. Every time I moved, she threatened to read another message aloud. Fiona treated my head like an uncooperative rehearsal prop while lecturing me about boundaries. She also reminded me that her competition started the following evening, and that forgetting the time would qualify as betrayal. I promised I would be there before she could weaponize the cotton swab. She demanded to know why Serena was thanking me for punching someone. I told her the important part was that I had protected my best friend. Fiona softened for half a second, but the softness died when she noticed Maeve's message about visiting our apartment Saturday morning. Maeve wanted to come over before Fiona's dance competition. Serena was already treating my address like a pickup zone, and Adeline expected a decision that same day. If Maeve entered our apartment while Fiona was armed with questions, the building would need new insurance. So Saturday morning, I left early and hid inside a bookstore across town. I found a quiet corner beside the game magazines, bought the cheapest coffee available, and congratulated myself for escaping the white fox. I had enough time to read 3 pages before a better coffee appeared beside my hand. Maeve Sinclair sat across from me. She had predicted the bookstore because I always hid near games when stressed. Maeve loved that she knew my habits, and she loved even more that I looked personally betrayed by accurate pattern recognition. Little bunny, Maeve murmured. Did you really think a hunter would visit the empty burrow first? I told her normal people called before entering someone's home. Maeve tapped my cup and said normal people didn't flee before receiving guests. Then she leaned over the table and added that someone she genuinely wanted would never escape her for long. The line sounded more serious than her usual teasing. Maeve heard it too, so she covered the moment by stealing my bookmark and asking for a favor. Her family had arranged a lunch with Damien Vaughn, a wealthy heir whose parents had business ties to hers. Maeve wanted me there as romantic body armor. I refused before she finished the sentence. Maeve moved around the table, boxed me against the shelf, and listed the consequences of disappointing her. She controlled my student government schedule, possessed my missing shirt button, and knew enough embarrassing details to ruin several peaceful semesters. I still refused. Maeve lowered her voice and asked whether I planned to leave her alone with a man who treated family negotiations like ownership papers. The playful pressure thinned for a moment. She genuinely wanted someone she trusted beside her, and she hated that asking plainly gave me the power to reject her. I almost agreed for free. Maeve saw the hesitation, decided vulnerability had lasted long enough, and reached for the stronger weapon. Then she opened her bag and placed a sealed promotional copy of Nightfall 4, the unreleased fourth game in my favorite series, on the table. Maeve's family business worked with the publisher, and she had acquired one review copy through that connection. I had followed the series for years. I had also spent the previous month pretending trailers were sufficient emotional nutrition. I picked up the case with both hands. You can judge me after Nightfall 4 actually releases. President Sinclair, I said, how may your most loyal vice president serve? Maeve laughed so hard a bookstore employee looked over. I had sold my principles for a video game before lunch, and honestly, the speed was the embarrassing part. On the walk to the restaurant, Maeve explained that Damien had recently returned to Maplehurst and viewed their family's business connection as a personal engagement announcement. She wanted him discouraged without turning lunch into a family fight. I told her she could simply reject him. Maeve threaded her arm through mine. I am rejecting him, and you're the visual aid. Before we reached the restaurant, Adeline stepped out of a cafe and handed me 2 discount coupons that expired that evening. She was the campus queen, the woman waiting for my fake dating answer, and she looked at Maeve's arm around mine with calm interest. Adeline explained that the coupons would be wasted if I delayed. The coupons concerned food, while the deadline concerned us. Maeve understood the silent pressure instantly. She tightened her arm around me and asked Adeline whether she often distributed gifts to other women's assistants. Adeline replied that I hadn't identified myself as Maeve's property. 2 women, 1 sidewalk, and suddenly I was a disputed campus resource. Adeline walked away after reminding me of the time. Inside, she was already comparing Maeve's touch to the formal distance in her own proposal, and that comparison bothered her more than she expected. At the restaurant, Damien Vaughn rose in a tailored suit. He was 21, rich, polished, and convinced the family connection had already completed the romantic work for him. Maeve's arm around mine cooled his welcome instantly. Maeve introduced me as the man accompanying her, then sat close and stole food from my plate. She fed me a bite while Damien watched. The performance was supposed to make him retreat, but her fingers lingered when she wiped sauce from my mouth, and suddenly the act looked suspiciously comfortable. Damien asked what my family did. I gave him the boring answer, and his interest vanished halfway through. Then he started speaking with the soft contempt of a man who thought the room had confirmed his ranking. He proposed wine. I rarely drank. Maeve expected one symbolic toast, and Damien kept pushing until refusing would have become the entire conversation. Then, as the server poured, Damien reached behind my chair as though adjusting it and slipped his wallet into my jacket pocket. I missed the move because I was looking at Maeve, but she didn't. Her eyes caught Damien's hand for one sharp beat, and her fingers stopped against my sleeve. Then she covered the reaction so quickly he believed the trick had worked. A server saw him lean behind me but thought he had dropped a napkin. The nearby couple already believed Maeve and I were together after the feeding display, so Damien had the public audience he wanted for the coming accusation. Meanwhile, Maeve still planned to sip enough wine to act dizzy, lean into my arms, and make Damien watch me carry her away. She had built a fake drunk romance scene inside his humiliation plan. That fantasy lasted until one glass made me genuinely useless. My face went warm, and the table started tilting under me. Maeve stared at me with disbelief because her fake drunk plan had just been hijacked by my actual lack of tolerance. I tried to stand and nearly introduced my forehead to the table. Maeve caught me under one arm, muttering that I had the alcohol resistance of wet paper. As she helped me up, Damien's wallet fell from my pocket. It hit the floor in clear view of the server and a nearby couple. Damien picked it up and raised his voice. He accused me of stealing from him, asked whether this was how I financed dates with wealthy women, and threatened to call the police unless Maeve stepped away from me. The room turned toward us. The server who had watched Damien hover near my chair looked uneasy, but the wallet was mine to explain and my mouth had stopped cooperating. Maeve gave Damien one private exit by asking him to stop. He mistook the warning for concern, smiled wider, and kept going. Damien kept going because public humiliation was the entire point. He called me desperate, accused me of using Maeve for status, and suggested she had mistaken charity for affection. His ugliest trait was simple. He believed money converted every person around him into property. Maeve belonged to his family's plans, the staff belonged beneath him, and I belonged outside the room. Maeve lowered me into the chair. Then she picked up her wine and threw it directly into Damien's face. The glass emptied across his shirt. The room went silent. The nearby couple stopped pretending to eat, and the server's fear changed into open relief. Maeve planted one heel on the edge of Damien's chair and told him she had watched his hand near my pocket. She said he could call anyone he wanted, but the first person hearing the full story would be his father, followed by every business partner who cared whether Damien framed guests during lunch. Damien's confidence disappeared under the wine dripping from his chin. Maeve leaned closer. Declan came because I asked him, while you came because our families forced the meeting, so learn the difference. She could have protected the family arrangement and sacrificed me as an embarrassing outsider. She chose me in front of the whole restaurant, and Damien knew exactly what that did to his status. He muttered an apology. Maeve made him repeat it clearly enough for the server to hear. The Wallet Prince had built a public stage for my humiliation and ended up apologizing on it with red wine down his collar. Maeve pulled my arm over her shoulder and took me outside. Behind us, Damien sat down because standing would have required dignity he no longer possessed. I remembered only pieces of the walk, Maeve cursing my alcohol tolerance, a cab refusing us because I looked seconds from disaster, and her arm locked around my waist while she blamed herself for bringing me into Damien's trap. When I woke, my head was in Maeve's lap on a park bench under a darkened sky. Maeve looked down at me and announced that I had slept until midnight, which made me sit up so fast the world rotated twice. Then she showed me the actual time. Barely an hour had passed. I called her cruel, and Maeve smoothed my hair and said fear was an excellent hangover treatment. For once, her voice stayed gentle. She asked whether I remembered anything after the restaurant. I remembered her arm around me and Damien's apology. Maeve looked away because the fact that I remembered her choice mattered more than she wanted to show. She warned me that smiling people could hide ugly intentions, and she included herself in that warning. Maeve knew how often she manipulated me. The difference was that Damien wanted control, while she wanted closeness and still lacked the courage to ask for it cleanly. Then she held up 2 VIP tickets to Fiona's performance at the City Arts Center. Her family sponsored several local arts events, and Maeve had secured the seats days earlier. She said she wanted to see the sister who had turned my apartment into a checkpoint. I told her bringing the White Fox into Fiona's biggest night was a terrible idea. Maeve tucked the tickets into my pocket. Good, because then it won't be boring. I thought surviving a planted wallet was the hard part. The real hit came under stage lights, when my sister's costume started coming apart. The next evening, Maeve sat beside me at the City Arts Center. Her VIP tickets had turned my sister's ballet competition into our newest, dangerous outing. Fiona was backstage, the house was full, and I was more nervous than the person about to perform. Maeve noticed me gripping the program and asked whether I planned to fight the judges if Fiona lost. I told her I was reviewing escape routes. Maeve leaned close and said she had never seen her little bunny this protective. Then Fiona stepped onto the stage. She had trained for months. Her opening sequence was clean, her turns were sharp, and for the first minute I forgot every romantic disaster waiting outside that theater. Fiona loved dancing with her entire body. You could see the work in every landing. But halfway through the performance, a seam near the side of her costume snapped. Fiona caught the fabric before it opened further, but the sudden movement broke her balance. Music kept playing while she tried to recover, another seam pulled loose, and the judges stopped the performance for safety. The audience murmured as the emergency stop judge reached for the controls. Beside her, the scoring judge checked the costume sheet, already knowing the interruption would cost points. Maeve sat forward while a blonde team member near the support area lowered her gaze, hiding a satisfied smile 1 second too late. Fiona returned and finished what she could after the costume was secured, but the interruption had already cost her. She landed the final sequence while fighting tears, and the applause rose because the audience understood she had continued under humiliation. The judges still had to score the break, and the final sheet placed her fourth. The dancer who took third kept glancing toward Fiona instead of celebrating. She knew the placement had changed through equipment failure, and that discomfort gave the loss a second witness beyond our family. Backstage, I found her sitting on a bench with the damaged costume folded across her knees. She had held herself together through the results. The second she saw me, that control ended. Fiona pressed her face against my chest and cried without speaking. Months of early mornings, sore feet, and skipped weekends had been reduced to a wardrobe failure she never caused. What do you say when months of your sister's work are sitting torn in her lap? I held her while the other dancers moved around us, and I had no joke for it. She had trusted the stage. Someone had used that trust against her. Maeve arrived carrying Fiona's coat. She praised the parts of the performance Fiona had completed and told her the judges had seen enough to know she belonged near the top. Fiona wiped her face, looked at Maeve's hand on my shoulder, and immediately asked why the student body president was touching her brother. Maeve replied that someone had to keep me presentable in public. Fiona informed her that the position was filled by family. For about 15 seconds, grief and jealousy fought over the same room. Then Fiona looked down at the torn costume, and both women stopped. Maeve handed over the coat, and Fiona accepted it. The white fox knew when teasing would turn cruel, and she never crossed that line with someone already broken. A blonde dancer approached us a few minutes later. Tatum Langley was 18, Fiona's teammate, and one of the support leads who handled costumes before performances. She offered Fiona a bright smile and started talking about how great next year would be. Everyone else on the team was angry or devastated, while Tatum sounded relieved and started talking about next year. Then she called me by Fiona's private nickname for me, a name Fiona only used at home. Fiona stiffened as Maeve's eyes narrowed. Tatum rushed to explain that Fiona mentioned me often. She touched the damaged costume while speaking, and Maeve noticed a loose repair thread matching the kit Tatum carried. Maeve pulled me aside and laid out the human part of the clue. A support lead with costume access had watched a teammate lose 4th place, yet Tatum's main emotion was relief about next year. The clue gave me the person worth confronting, though it still needed a confession. I asked Tatum who had checked Fiona's seams. She said several people had helped and tried to leave, so I called Serena. Serena answered on the first ring and demanded to know whether I had accepted Adeline's proposal. I ignored that and loudly told her I had found evidence of deliberate costume sabotage. Then I added that I might need police involved unless the person responsible confessed immediately, and Tatum went pale. Over the phone, Serena heard the words, evidence, police, and my rushed voice. Her brain skipped every reasonable interpretation and landed on kidnapping. She started shouting my location to someone in the background and promised she was coming with her bow case. I covered the phone and gave Tatum one last chance, and she confessed before Serena had even reached the parking lot. Maeve shut the dressing room door so the confession stayed with the people directly involved. Tatum tried to call the damage a small adjustment, and I made her look at Fiona's swollen ankle and the 4th place sheet. The softer phrase died immediately. She admitted loosening the seams after learning Fiona planned to quit dancing. Tatum believed a lower placement would keep Fiona from reaching the private goal she had set for herself, which would force her to stay another year. I asked why Fiona wanted to quit. Tatum looked at my sister. Fiona tried to stop her, but the secret had already caused enough damage. Fiona had planned to give up dance so she could spend more time helping me at home. She saw me managing school, student government, and the apartment, and she decided her own dream was the easiest thing to sacrifice. Tatum had begged her to reconsider. She had also confessed that her feelings for Fiona went beyond friendship. Fiona rejected the confession because the largest space in her heart was still reserved for family, especially the brother she believed needed her. Tatum had panicked and attacked the performance to save the dancer, and in the process, she became the person who hurt Fiona most. Fiona asked whether Tatum had ever considered telling her the truth. Tatum said she had tried, but every conversation ended with Fiona insisting that family came first. Fiona answered that love did not turn sabotage into permission. Tatum's face collapsed because the person she wanted to protect had named the act for what it was. Maeve's anger went cold as she told Tatum that concern did not give her permission to choose someone else's loss. Tatum couldn't answer, and the support kit dropped from her hand. The teammate who had sounded cheerful finally looked at the 4th place sheet she had caused. Fiona asked everyone to leave her alone. Outside, rain had covered the arts center steps. Fiona's ankle was sore from the broken landing, so I carried her on my back while Maeve took the damaged costume and gave us space. For several blocks, Fiona said nothing. Her arms rested loosely around my shoulders, and the city lights blurred across the wet street. Maeve walked half a block behind us with an umbrella over the damaged costume. She wanted to stay close, yet she understood that this part belonged to family. That restraint was one of the first times I saw how careful the white fox could be when affection demanded silence instead of performance. I asked whether she would regret quitting. Fiona answered that she had changed her mind. She would keep dancing until she surpassed the woman connected to my past, the one person Fiona had always treated like an invisible rival. That opened the wound I had been avoiding since the first love letter. 2 years earlier, a girl I trusted had left. Her identity stayed buried, and even then I couldn't explain every reason. I only knew the result. I had let myself believe closeness was safe, then watched it disappear. After that, every confession started a countdown to the next loss in my head. That wound kept Serena at friendship distance and turned Maeve's attention into a joke whenever she got too close. It also made Adeline's fake relationship feel safer because its exit was visible from the start. Fiona tightened her arms around me. She had known enough of the wound to hate the woman who left, but she had never understood how much my fear shaped every choice after it. Then she reminded me how her own dream had started. When we were children, Fiona had refused to attend dance class. I wanted the living room to myself for an old superhero show, so I copied the hero's dramatic voice and told her that her future was hanging by a thread, unless she went immediately. Fiona believed every word, went to class, loved it, and carried that ridiculous phrase through years of training. A careless line I used to claim the television turned into one of the reasons she kept standing after injuries and bad auditions. I stopped under an awning because that hit me harder than the rain. Fiona had built a life from something I barely remembered saying, and now she was ready to throw that life away for me. I told her no and tightened my grip. "You keep dancing. You don't get to sacrifice the thing you love because I can't organize my own life." Fiona asked whether I would stop sacrificing my relationships because someone else had left. I didn't have an answer ready. A car hit a deep puddle beside us. I turned and covered Fiona before the water reached her. The splash soaked my back, my pants, and most of the dignity still available that week while Fiona stayed dry. She laughed for the first time since the performance, then started crying again against my shoulder. At home, I wrapped Fiona's ankle, made hot tea, and repeated the order. She would continue dancing. She would let me carry my own workload, and if she ever planned another grand sacrifice, she had to tell me before a teammate started redesigning costumes with criminal intent. Fiona agreed, then ordered me to stop treating every woman like a future goodbye. Fiona showed me the calluses on her feet and the bruises from rehearsal. She had accepted every physical price of dance willingly. Quitting for me would have been the first sacrifice made from guilt, and I refused to let guilt become her final performance. We sat there in damp clothes, both trying to protect the other by making choices the other never requested. We finally said it plainly. Fiona wanted to care for me. I wanted her dream protected. Neither goal required her to quit. My phone buzzed with Adeline's deadline, so I checked the time and ran. The cafe was nearly closing when I arrived, soaked from the knees down and breathing like I had crossed Maplehurst on foot. Adeline was still at the same window table, her book closed and her tea long finished. She already knew I had faced a family crisis because Serena had flooded her phone with kidnapping warnings, police theories, and 3 increasingly dramatic rescue plans. Adeline had calmly told Serena my location once she confirmed I was safe, which prevented an archery champion from storming the arts center. I apologized for being late. Adeline looked at the rain on my clothes, then pushed a warm drink toward me. She had waited because she understood the answer might change both our lives on campus. "Declan," Adeline asked, "will you be my boyfriend?" She held my eyes through one long pause. "My fake boyfriend," she clarified. "What is your answer?" The next college morning answered Adeline's cafe question before I said a word. She was officially my fake girlfriend. The wider campus still knew nothing, and Serena was waiting near the gate with rope, handcuffs, and a romance magazine folded open to an article about correcting dishonest men. I had accepted the deal. Adeline had sent a simple morning message confirming that our first public day had begun, and I had spent the walk to campus rehearsing how to tell Serena without making her feel discarded. Serena's equipment proved she had prepared a different conversation. My rehearsed explanation had no chance against the handcuffs, and you already know it. She snapped the handcuffs once, opened the magazine to a page about honest communication, and asked whether I wanted to read the advice before or after questioning. The absurd props made nearby students laugh until they saw the hurt under her anger, and then the laughter thinned. Serena had discovered the result through one glance at my face. She raised the handcuffs and asked whether I preferred the gentle interview or the advanced version. I chose running, and she chased me across the quad, shouting that real best friends didn't hide new relationships from each other. I jumped a low hedge. Serena cleared it without slowing, because years of athletic training had finally found its most humiliating application. 2 first-year students moved aside and started taking bets on whether I reached the humanities building. Serena heard them, promised the winner my funeral invitation, and gained speed. A groundskeeper moved his cart out of our path without looking surprised. Silverbrook had started treating Serena's pursuit like campus weather. I cut through the humanities building and slipped into an empty classroom. My phone rang before I caught my breath. Maeve wanted me in the student government office for paperwork. I rubbed the microphone against my sleeve and claimed the signal was breaking. Maeve listened to the fake static with cold patience. She knew exactly what I was doing, but catching me personally would have required leaving her desk. So she called Gwen Stanton, the orange-haired disciplinary committee member who served as her confidant, tracker, and completely unbiased romance enforcer. Maeve called her Little Tangerine. Gwen liked the name and liked helping Maeve corner me even more. While Gwen searched the building, the classroom door opened and Adeline stepped inside. The campus queen wore a dark dress under her college coat, and the simple outfit still made the room feel underdressed. She closed the door, sat beside me, and asked whether our performance had begun. I told her we were hiding from 2 separate women, which seemed like a poor opening strategy. Adeline took my hand anyway. She had studied several guides the previous night, and every guide agreed that believable couples touched casually. Her fingers were cool, her posture was formal, and the contrast was so Adeline that I almost laughed. Then she noticed dust in my hair and leaned closer to brush it away. Outside the door, Serena had caught up. Maeve had also arrived after Gwen reported my location. Both women heard Adeline's voice and paused. Adeline heard them outside, so she moved closer until her face was inches from mine. Serena opened the door first, with Maeve appearing behind her. From their angle, Adeline looked ready to kiss me. Serena's hand dropped from the doorknob. Her anger vanished so quickly that the hurt underneath became visible. Then, she turned and ran. Maeve stayed 1 second longer. Her smile held, but the fingers around her folder bent the cover. She told me student government work could wait, then walked away with perfect posture while planning several ways to make Adeline regret winning that image. One gesture sent Serena running, and Maeve straight toward retaliation. Gwen reached the doorway seconds later and saw Maeve retreating with her folder crushed at the edge. She didn't need an explanation. She watched Serena disappear down the opposite hall, looked at Adeline still beside me, and sent Maeve one message: "This is bad." Maeve replied with a single request for every literature club funding file. Adeline leaned back and admitted she had heard Serena outside. She wanted the relationship announced efficiently, and an intimate misunderstanding would spread faster than any formal statement. I should have objected, but I accepted the logic because my original goal was to make people believe us. We walked toward the literature club because Adeline wanted me seen beside her in a normal campus setting. A white-haired club member stopped us in the hall and asked to speak with her privately. He was one of the admirers who had ignored several polite rejections. Adeline looked at me, and the cue was clear. I stepped between them and asked whether the conversation concerned club business. The admirer told me to stay out of it. He had rehearsed a speech about devotion, patience, and how Adeline would eventually understand him. He also claimed that one cafe meeting couldn't outweigh months of watching her from a distance, which revealed exactly why Adeline needed the fake relationship. He treated his observation as intimacy and her refusals as incomplete negotiations. Then Adeline placed one hand around my arm. "This is Declan Avery," she told him. When Adeline added, "He's my boyfriend," the line traveled through the doorway. The admirer stared at her hand, looked at me, and lost every sentence he had prepared. Two club members inside the doorway stopped sorting books. A student walking past slowed long enough to hear the word boyfriend, then immediately reached for her phone. The admirer asked whether Adeline was serious. Adeline rested her head against my shoulder. "Completely." He stepped backward like the floor had moved. A stack of returned books slid from his hands, and the club secretary bent to collect them without offering comfort. The admirer had expected the room to support his persistence. Instead, the people who had watched Adeline reject him repeatedly looked relieved that someone had finally ended the loop. By the time he left, half the literature club knew, and the other half was learning through messages. The campus queen had publicly chosen the vice president who spent lunch hiding from handcuffs. My social status was now a rumor with legs. Adeline apologized for announcing it without warning. She explained that the admirer had followed her between classes for weeks, and visible proof was the only boundary he respected. Then she asked me to join the literature club. Repeated meetings would make our relationship look natural, and I could help with the club work she was struggling to manage. I agreed to help, and Adeline's shoulders loosened. The response was tiny, but it was real. She had expected me to resent the public claim. Before we separated, Adeline checked a romance app on her phone. The app recommended leaving a visible sign of intimacy so witnesses would stop treating the relationship as theoretical. I asked what kind of sign. Adeline stepped close, touched my shoulder, and kissed the side of my neck. The contact lasted 1 startled second. When she moved back, a clear lipstick mark remained above my collar. Adeline studied it like completed homework. This should be convincing. I had no useful response. The campus queen had turned my neck into supporting documentation, and the worst part was that she looked pleased with the result. What was I supposed to do with a girlfriend who treated my pulse like homework? Adeline asked whether the contact had crossed a boundary. The clinical phrasing couldn't hide how closely she watched my answer. I told her warning me first would have helped, yet I wasn't angry. Relief softened her face. She had copied the physical action from an app, but checking my reaction afterward came from genuine care. She also asked whether we could walk to college together from then on. Shared routines would help the performance, and she wanted to understand what couples talked about when nobody was watching. I agreed again, and after class, Serena intercepted me beside the convenience store. She had put away the rope and handcuffs, which scared me more. Her eyes went straight to the lipstick mark. Serena asked when Adeline and I had started dating. I lied that it happened the previous day after the cafe. She wanted to know why I hadn't told her, and I claimed everything had moved too quickly. Then I made the mistake of saying Adeline was understanding. Serena heard the comparison I never intended. Adeline was understanding, which meant Serena was difficult. Adeline was calm, which meant Serena was too much. Every insecurity Serena had carried into her confession lined up behind that one word. She bought 2 ice creams and made me sit beside her outside the store. The cashier recognized us from the archery exhibition and casually asked whether we were celebrating. Serena answered that we were conducting an autopsy. The cashier stopped smiling and handed over extra napkins. Serena asked whether all our future outings belonged to Adeline now. Would Adeline attend the archery events? Would Adeline get the bakery shifts, the morning walks, the stupid arguments, and the seat beside me when Serena pretended to sleep? I tried to tell her friendship would remain the same. Serena asked how that could be true when I had hidden the biggest change in my life and let her discover it through another woman's face inches from mine. She didn't want a promise about the future, she wanted proof that the past still belonged to both of us. Serena laughed once, and the sound broke halfway through. She pulled the ribbon from her hair and handed it to me. She had asked me to tie that ribbon hundreds of times because her hands were usually full with equipment. Now she asked whether this would be the last time. I tied it carefully. Serena touched the knot and started listing the rainy afternoons I had waited after practice, the late-night messages when she couldn't sleep, the food I remembered she hated, and all the small ways we had filled almost 3 years without calling any of it romance. Then her face crumpled, and Serena grabbed my shirt and cried against my chest. The ice cream slipped from her hand and hit the pavement, but neither of us looked down. She called me cruel, cursed Adeline, cursed herself for waiting, and finally said she wished she had never fallen for me. Her fists kept tightening because she wanted to push me away and hold on at the same time. I wrapped my arms around her and let her cry. There was no joke, no clever defense, and no way to pretend the fake relationship had solved anything. I had protected myself from a future loss by creating one in front of me. When Serena could breathe again, she stayed against me for another minute because stepping away made the separation feel official. Her breathing settled slowly while mine refused to cooperate. I could feel the ribbon knot against my shoulder, a tiny, ordinary task carrying more weight than every public boyfriend performance Adeline and I had staged. Then Serena stepped back and wiped her face with both hands. She told me she hated me for making ordinary memories feel like evidence she had imagined the whole relationship. I said her memories were real. Serena answered that real memories made the rejection hurt worse. Then she walked away with the ribbon I had tied still in her hair, leaving me beside 2 melting ice creams and a fake girlfriend mark everyone could see. That night, I lay on the couch staring at Serena's last message and wondering whether my brilliant fake relationship had solved anything beyond creating better gossip. Fiona found me there, took one look at my face, and returned with noodles instead of questions. She sat on the floor beside the couch and offered to keep me company. Fiona still lacked the truth about Adeline. She knew Serena had been crying, and she knew I blamed myself. She pushed the bowl into my hands and told me that refusing dinner would only create 2 miserable people instead of 1. Home security lowered the alarm and stayed quiet, but before I could sit with the damage, Adeline texted that she wanted to walk to college together the next morning. At sunrise, I met Adeline near my apartment. She carried homemade lemon tea and wore a pale sweater that made half-awake pedestrians remember posture. She handed me the drink, thanked me for yesterday, and asked whether the lipstick mark had produced measurable results. I told her 3 strangers had stared at my neck and 1 cafeteria worker had given me a thumbs up. Adeline considered that successful data. Before we reached campus, 2 tattooed guys stepped into our path. They accused me of stalking Adeline and warned me to stop pretending I belonged beside her. The tattoos were temporary. One corner had started peeling near her wrist, and the taller guy kept hiding it every time he tried to look dangerous. I asked for their student IDs. They demanded to know why. I reminded them that I was Silverbrook's student body vice president, and harassment complaints went directly through our office before reaching campus discipline. Then I offered to let Gwen inspect the tattoos and the threatening messages they had posted overnight. Both men folded instantly as a campus shuttle driver had stopped nearby after hearing the raised voices. He watched the taller guy hide the peeling tattoo, then laughed loud enough for both men to hear. Adeline's arrival turned the embarrassment public, and the threat lost every ounce of weight it had carried 30 seconds earlier. The shorter one tried to wipe his wrist against his pants. The taller one claimed they had only come to protect Adeline's reputation, although his private goal was much simpler. He wanted her to notice him. Adeline arrived beside me and linked her arm through mine. "He isn't stalking me," she told them. "Declan is my boyfriend." The taller guy looked at me, looked at Adeline, and asked the universe why people like me received all the luck. His friends started tearing up for real. Their intimidation attempt became a support group before the crosswalk changed. I let them leave with a warning. They apologized so hard that, within a few weeks, they would start orbiting me for gossip instead of conflict. Adeline watched them retreat and asked whether public boyfriend status always caused men to cry. I told her Silverbrook's romantic ecosystem was fragile. She handed me her book bag. The thing weighed like a small library because it basically was one. I nearly dropped it, and Adeline's tiny smile proved she had packed the trap on purpose. She knew exactly what 12 books would do to a man who had already survived Serena's chase. "You're enjoying this," I told her. Adeline said couples shared burdens. She had interpreted the phrase with dangerous precision. When I asked how many books she had packed, she admitted 12 before adding that 3 were optional. I reminded her optional weight still obeyed gravity. She matched my pace without offering to lighten the bag because she genuinely believed the rule was working. Every few blocks, she rewarded me with lemon tea. The walk became a relationship experiment designed by someone who had never tested human backs. Then Adeline asked why literature mattered to me. I said stories. Let people borrow emotions without paying the full price themselves. She went straight for the wound. Did I prefer fictional love because fictional people couldn't leave? That stopped me, and her next question hit harder. Did I love Serena? I asked whether she wanted strategy or honesty. Adeline chose honesty without hesitation. I told her Serena was one of the most important people in my life. I trusted her, protected her, and knew her angry footsteps from 2 hallways away. I could even predict which insult meant she was actually hurt. But the romantic feeling still wasn't there, and pretending otherwise would hurt her worse. Adeline asked whether Serena knew. I said she knew the answer and still hoped it could change. Then Adeline looked at our linked arms and understood her public role gave her the exact place Serena had wanted for years. She loosened her grip instead of displaying victory. Adeline cared about our arrangement, but she also understood Serena's grief was real. That restraint made the fake girlfriend more dangerous than the lipstick mark. We reached the student government building, where Gwen Stanton was waiting with crossed arms. Little Tangerine had spent 20 minutes tracking me after Maeve discovered I was walking with Adeline instead of finishing council work. Gwen pointed at the heavy bag, the tea, and Adeline's hand on my sleeve, then declared that I had been caught dating during office hours. I argued that college hadn't started yet. Gwen chased me through the hallway anyway. Adeline watched us go with the composed interest of a scientist observing prey migration. Maeve, meanwhile, was sitting alone in her office with a ribbon hidden under a file. She had brought it because she wanted me to tie it for her after seeing Serena's hair the day before, and she hated herself for wanting such a small imitation. Gwen dragged me into the office and shut the door. Maeve sat behind her desk pretending to review reports, wearing her president posture while the untouched coffee beside my chair proved she had been waiting. I asked why she looked miserable. Maeve produced a ribbon and asked whether I knew the difference between me and a fish. I told her a fish had better attendance. She tried again, explaining that a fish belonged in water while I belonged beside her. The sentence came out wrong, so she frowned, started over and blurted the truth instead. Maeve said, "I like you, Declan." Nobody moved. Outside the glass wall, Gwen stopped mid-step. A student waiting with a budget request looked from Maeve to me, then quietly backed away because even strangers could hear that the president had crossed out of ordinary office territory. Maeve's fox mask cracked completely. Her eyes widened because the line had escaped before she could shape it into teasing, and the ribbon tightened between her fingers. I stared at her, and Maeve panicked and added that she liked the things I liked, which was why she had been asking about fish. She pointed at an old aquarium screensaver on her monitor as though it could rescue the logic. The aquarium couldn't help. The student waiting outside abandoned his budget request because he was trapped beside the most awkward confession on campus. Maeve's explanation made less sense with every word, and Gwen covered her face outside the glass door, furious that the cleanest confession of Maeve's life was drowning in aquatic nonsense. The white fox had finally slipped. That confession killed the fox joke, so where exactly was I meant to hide? I asked whether she was serious. Maeve's first instinct was to tease me for needing the answer repeated. Her second was to say it again. Fear won between them, which left the silence doing more work than either of us could handle. Maeve looked away and told me to sit down. That refusal to answer was still an answer, and both of us knew it. I stepped into the hallway to give Maeve room, and Gwen blocked the door before she could flee through work. Gwen had watched Maeve collect my button, defend me at the restaurant, and crush a folder after Adeline's near kiss. The fish disaster was the final insult to months of evidence. Gwen entered and confronted Maeve directly. She told her to stop treating affection like a prank, confess properly, and steal me from Adeline before the campus queen turned research into a real relationship. Maeve regained control by choosing violence against paperwork. When I returned, she placed the literature club's funding request on the desk and proposed dissolving the club for low activity. The timing was so petty that even Gwen looked impressed. Maeve listed missing reports and low event attendance in one breath. Adeline's club secretary was waiting outside with a box of donated books, and she heard enough to realize the attack had started only after the boyfriend rumor. Her grip tightened around the box. The club threat had already created a victim beyond our flirtation. I cut the process off and asked whether any other club with the same numbers faced closure. She admitted they didn't. The literature club secretary outside heard the admission and lifted her head. Maeve had lost the ability to hide the attack behind policy, which forced the conflict back where it belonged, between her jealousy and my refusal. I told her the review would be fair or I would refuse to sign it. Maeve outranked me, but student government actions needed both our names for that decision. Her jealousy had found institutional stationery, and I wasn't letting it bite Adeline's club. Maeve's eyes sharpened as she asked whether I would fight this hard for her if another office targeted student government. I answered yes without thinking. That response softened her for one beat, then made the jealousy worse because my loyalty was real and still shared with Adeline. She had expected me to defend fairness, but she hadn't expected the defense to feel like choosing Adeline over her again, so she changed tactics. She withdrew the closure proposal, assigned me to a special Saturday inventory meeting, and announced that we would handle it together away from the literature club. I asked what kind of inventory required a weekend. Maeve smiled and slid the ribbon back into her pocket. The kind you'll discover when you arrive, little bunny. I thought jealousy would stay inside Maeve's office. By the next weekend it had followed me through Serena's bedroom, Maeve's living room, and a cake with a number I couldn't ignore. Maeve's special Saturday inventory trap was scheduled for that evening. Before I could reach it, Fiona dragged me to a mall for swimwear, and my private romantic war promoted me to family shopping assistant. Fiona dragged me between racks while rejecting every suit I considered safe enough for public water. She also admitted why my swim trunks had vanished the previous week. She had borrowed them as emergency shorts under her dance warm-ups after forgetting her own, then returned them to the wrong drawer and decided silence was easier than explanation. I told home security that theft remained theft even when committed by family. Fiona called it resource sharing and moved on before I could win. At the register, she checked a savings app and quickly hid the screen. I caught a number large enough to make no sense for casual shopping. Fiona explained that years of allowance, small dance prizes, and stubborn saving had built the balance, but she refused to tell me what the money was for. She hid the purpose, and I let the question sit. I bought her a simple swimsuit after vetoing 3 options for reasons Fiona described as elder brother panic. The sales clerk watched our argument, recognized the family resemblance, and sided with Fiona purely because my standards were ridiculous. Fiona accepted the final choice, kissed my cheek in thanks the way she had since childhood, and warned me that Serena had missed 3 days of class. And 10 minutes later, the warning became an assignment when Bryn Hensley, Serena's tall class representative and closest campus friend, intercepted me outside the mall. She pushed a folder of class notes into my hands and ordered me to deliver it because I was the only person present who knew Serena's address. Bryn's designer tote looked suspiciously like a gift bag to Fiona. Home security saw another woman hand me something, narrowed her eyes, and followed at a distance when I left. I reached Serena's house and spent a full minute debating whether to knock. The girl I had rejected had disappeared from college, and every answer behind that door looked painful. Serena's mother, Maribel Halston, opened it before I decided. She owned Halston Bakery and could turn concern into a matchmaking operation before the kettle boiled, which was how she earned the matchmaking mom label. She had heard Serena crying after our ice cream conversation, so she recognized me immediately as the likely cause. She pulled me inside, asked whether I enjoyed breaking her daughter's heart, then offered dinner in the same breath. I tried to leave the notes and escape. Maribel sat me on the couch and announced that cowards didn't get to abandon dinner invitations. She placed tea in front of me, asked whether I had eaten, and then asked what exactly I had said to make Serena skip class for 3 days. The motherly care made the interrogation harder to escape because every accusation arrived with snacks. Serena came home while I was trapped there. She saw me on the couch and screamed. Maribel looked at her daughter with perfect innocence. Your illusion is waiting. Take him upstairs before he fades. Then, matchmaking mom walked into the kitchen and closed the door behind her while Serena approached me slowly. She had spent 3 days imagining conversations that would never happen. In one version, I apologized. In another, I announced the relationship had ended. In the worst one, I never came back at all. Seeing me inside her house forced every imagined ending into the same room, and she couldn't decide which one to believe. She told the illusion that she refused to touch it because contact might make it disappear. I stood up, and Serena stepped back, caught her heel on the rug, and crashed into me. Her forehead hit my chest, my elbow hit the couch, and the pain proved I was real. Serena froze, realized I was solid, and fled upstairs because she was wearing house clothes and hadn't prepared for an audience. Her pride moved faster than any athlete I had ever seen. I followed with the class notes, then saw red liquid leaking under her bedroom door. The worst possibility hit me before reason did, so I called her name. Serena didn't answer because she was busy changing and pretending I didn't exist, so I opened the door. Serena yelped and threw a pillow. The red liquid was spilled berry juice from a tipped glass. What else was I supposed to assume when red liquid crawled under her door? She was already covered in oversized pajamas, and a box of homemade cupcakes sat beside her bed. Relief came first, with embarrassment right behind it. Serena accused me of breaking in. I accused her juice of staging a crime scene. She hugged the cupcake box and claimed the pastries belonged to another Serena who had never confessed to anyone. I played along and introduced myself as a delivery man with notes for the mysterious second Serena. She asked whether the delivery man had a girlfriend. the game stopped being harmless. Serena opened a music app and played a song about loving someone who had already chosen another person. She sang the accusing lines directly at me, then asked whether Adeline treated me well. I said Adeline did, and Serena looked away and tried to pull on a hoodie beneath a long coat because she still felt exposed in pajamas. Her hands shook inside the sleeves. I thought she had started crying again and tugged the coat away to see her face. The hoodie caught halfway, leaving Serena tangled with both arms above her head while still fully covered. She stared at me in total disbelief. I backed out before the next pillow arrived. A minute later, Serena opened the door in the hoodie, shoved the cupcake box against my chest, and told me the pastries were payment for delivering notes. Her anger had burned through the awkwardness, which was exactly what she needed. We finally talked plainly, and Serena asked whether I had come because I felt guilty or because I missed her. I answered both. She wanted a cleaner answer, yet the admission still reached her. She was hurt, she still cared about me, and vanishing from class had solved nothing. I offered to help at Halston Bakery on weekends because Maribel had mentioned being short-staffed. Serena pretended the offer was inconvenient, then accepted before I could withdraw it. Downstairs, Maribel heard every word through the kitchen door and quietly added my name to the schedule. Matchmaking Mom had achieved employment-based proximity without leaving the house. On the walk home, I found Adeline crouched beside a kitten near the sidewalk. She was petting it with the solemn focus she usually gave old books. The kitten climbed her coat, slipped through the loose front, and created immediate chaos. Adeline grabbed my arm while trying to guide it out. Then the animal smelled Serena's cupcakes, launched from her collar, and landed on the box in my hands. Adeline ended up pressed against my side while I saved the cupcakes from a tiny criminal. Across the street, Gwen watched from behind a bus shelter. She had used treats to draw the kitten toward us because Maeve wanted information about how naturally Adeline and I behaved together. Gwen expected a real couple to laugh and touch without thinking. Instead, Adeline thanked me formally, adjusted her coat, and asked whether the pastry rescue had altered our schedule. Gwen wrote one conclusion in her messages to Maeve: physically close, emotionally weird. That holiday weekend, Fiona left for her overnight trip. I celebrated the empty apartment with snacks, games, and the wild dream of 6 uninterrupted hours. Maeve knocked before the game finished loading. She wore a sleek white outfit for our scheduled student government errand, and the cut of it made forgetting my own address a reasonable risk. Maeve knew exactly what she was doing. Her confession had slipped out days earlier, and now every tease carried an admitted truth underneath. Our neighbor opened her door, saw Maeve beside me, and congratulated me on finally bringing my girlfriend home. I denied it too quickly. Maeve smiled at the neighbor, wrapped one arm around mine, and thanked her for being supportive. Then she used the misunderstanding to step inside before I could close the door. She inspected the apartment, found Serena's cupcakes, and asked whether my fake girlfriend knew another woman was feeding me. I told her food was neutral territory. Maeve picked up a cookie and hid it behind her ear. She claimed it had vanished, then invited me to find it. I leaned close, spotted the edge near her hair, and reached with my mouth because both hands were full with the box. Maeve turned at the same moment. My lips touched her cheek. One accidental kiss. We froze as the cookie dropped between us. Maeve's hand stayed on my shoulder, and my own face went hot enough to expose every claim that the contact meant nothing. For one clean second, the white fox lost every prepared line. Her face warmed, her fingers tightened around my sleeve, and she looked genuinely happy before panic reminded her to make it a joke. Maeve announced that an accidental kiss inside my home counted as a marriage ceremony under ancient rabbit law. How do you explain an accidental marriage to the woman already holding the evidence? I told her ancient rabbit law had poor documentation. She refused the annulment, and our actual errand was a filing cabinet for student government. At the mall, Maeve steered me past a glowing toy crystal, so I grabbed it and lowered my voice. Then I announced myself as the Lord of the Moon, ruler of hidden destinies and discounted merchandise. A nearby child applauded while his father asked whether the crystal actually worked. I doubled down and predicted a checkout discount. The store announced 10% off seconds later. The child believed me completely, and Maeve's recording became about 10 times worse. The second I noticed her phone, I lunged. Maeve dodged behind the display and narrated my pursuit like a nature documentary. She held the phone over her head while the child cheered for the Lord of the Moon. Then she played the clip at full volume. 3 shoppers and 1 cashier watched my new identity become permanent. From that day forward, the Lord of the Moon video became her favorite weapon. The cabinet itself wiped out most of our remaining student government budget. At checkout, I asked about the reward Maeve owed me for surviving Damien's blind date. Her entire expression softened because she thought I was finally preparing to answer her confession. I asked for Nightfall 4. Her face went blank. Maeve replayed the video twice for emotional damages and demanded compensation for what she called romantic fraud. I ended up buying her a white fox purse from the shop next door and telling her it suited her better than anything else there. The compliment killed her anger. Maeve held the purse against her side, checked her reflection in the window, and tried to hide the small private smile that appeared anyway. She kept the gift, so my attempt to collect a video game ended with the white fox carrying a relationship trophy and my dignity stored on her phone. We stopped at a cafe afterward. Maeve drank from my Coke without asking and brought up the first time we met. That memory went back to a rainy bus stop. Maeve had been standing under an open shelter while wind pushed water across the bench. I moved beside her with an umbrella and offered her a bouquet I was carrying because the flowers were getting crushed. The bouquet had been meant for someone else. I had never told Maeve whether the intended recipient received another bouquet. I also kept the possible link to the girl who left and the reason I had looked so lost in the rain buried. Those questions sat behind the memory without receiving answers. Maeve remembered every detail. She asked who the flowers were for and I refused to answer. Then she asked whether Serena had recently confessed to me. Gwen had passed along the public chase rumor, and Maeve wanted to know whether the woman tied to my long history had finally moved first. I confirmed the rejection without giving details. Maeve asked whether Serena still had a chance. I said Serena had already decided she did. The answer pulled a brief laugh from Maeve, followed by a flash of competition she made no effort to hide. Maeve watched me for a long moment, took another sip from the Coke, and left the can in front of me with her lipstick on the rim. "Keep your secrets, little bunny," she said. "I'll collect the answers another way." The next morning, Serena arrived for our first shift at Halston Bakery, dressed like a pink-haired vampire. She wore a black cape, a red ribbon, and tiny fake fangs. And yes, I was the idiot who let her inside before breakfast. She tried to look terrifying, caught the cape under one shoe, and nearly fell before I opened the door. I told her my parents were visiting, and Serena panicked. She checked her costume and covered the fake fangs. Then she asked why I hadn't warned her before letting her arrive dressed for a midnight side quest. I let the fear build for 5 seconds, then admitted the apartment was empty, so Serena bit my arm. The fake fangs still hurt, and the archery menace called it a proportional response. At Halston Bakery, Maribel had converted the weekend into a vampire-themed promotion. Serena pushed a matching uniform into my hands and insisted couples looked better when coordinated. I reminded her we were co-workers. Serena tied my cape herself. "Then cooperate with your senior co-worker, darling." Holly Danvers, the red-haired shift lead, walked in during that line and immediately assumed we were dating. A cashier near the front heard the word darling and started rearranging the break schedule so Serena and I could eat together. The misunderstanding changed our whole shift before either of us touched an oven. She congratulated Serena and asked whether the rejection story had been a lover's quarrel. Then she sent us into the private kitchen together because young couples work better without witnesses. Serena looked delighted while I looked at the camera in my soul. Our first order was a cake commissioned by a guy apologizing to the girl whose heart he had broken. Holly read the message aloud, glanced at me, and left before Serena could stop laughing. The cake might as well have arrived with my name on it. Serena smeared a little cream on one finger and promised she would be professional. Then she tried to mark my cheek, missed, and slapped me with the whole hand. I stared at the cream across my face. Serena apologized while laughing, stepped backward, and slipped on a drop towel. She grabbed the nearest stable object, which happened to be my belt. Holly opened the kitchen door at that exact second. Serena was on one knee, my belt was in her hand, and cream covered my face. Holly closed the door again without asking a single question. On the other side, she whispered something to the cashier, and both women burst into laughter. Serena released my belt, stood too fast, and hit her head on the counter. Her plan to embarrass me had already injured her pride and her forehead. By the time Holly reached the register, the whole front counter thought Serena and I were dating. Serena declared that she would recover control by taking humiliating photos of me. She raised the piping bag like a weapon. The seam burst and blasted frosting across her own face. Then smoke rolled from the oven because the temperature had been set too high. Serena shoved me out of the kitchen, killed the heat, and saved the cake. Then she cleaned the mess while I listened from the other side. Her evil plans kept rebounding on her, but her actual bakery skills were excellent. She emerged 10 minutes later with the order repaired and only one frosting streak left in her hair. Holly inspected the cake, saw that Serena had saved the apology message and the decoration, and gave her a genuine nod of respect. Serena's recovery proved her competence, which restored enough dignity for her to threaten me again. I pointed at it, and Serena warned me that survival depended on silence. The shift got stranger when a wealthy older customer cornered me near the register. She complimented my costume, asked when I finished work, and offered to take care of me if I wanted a more comfortable life. I was still searching for the polite exit when Serena stepped between us. She wrapped both arms around mine and announced that I was her boyfriend. The customer looked Serena over, laughed, and asked whether a college student could afford to keep me happy. 2 regulars near the pastry case stopped talking. Holly leaned against the register, ready to intervene, but Serena wanted the answer herself. Serena raised her chin and said she could work, cook, shoot competitively, and inherit a bakery. Then she offered to support me herself if I ever became too fragile for employment. I told her the economic plan needed review. Maribel overheard the last part and nearly cried with joy. The wealthy customer left without my number, while the two regulars congratulated Serena on defending her boyfriend. The public claim had survived a challenge and gained witnesses, which made the fake relationship with Adeline feel less secure by comparison. In her mind, the rejection was now a negotiation over future household income. After the shift, Maribel drove us toward dinner. She spent the ride exposing Serena's preparation. Serena had stayed awake planning the vampire outfit, practiced several greetings, and once suggested buying the apartment building so I would never move away. Serena covered her face and begged her mother to focus on traffic. Maribel kept going, explaining that Serena had compared outfit colors, practiced a casual smile in the mirror, and rejected 3 hairstyles because each one looked too obvious. I looked at Serena, and she threatened to exit the moving vehicle if I laughed. Maribel reached the restaurant, circled the parking lot once, and announced that she couldn't find a space. There were 6 open spaces directly beside us. Then she dropped us at the entrance and drove away. Matchmaking mom had converted family dinner into a date with one fake parking problem. The restaurant staff seated us beside a window. Serena had brought a small wrapped gift, and the server mistook the decorated cake box for a birthday celebration. Before either of us corrected her, music started, 2 staff members arrived clapping, and a camera appeared. Serena panicked for half a second, but then leaned closer to me for the photo. I placed one hand behind her chair so we would fit in frame, and Serena shifted until our shoulders touched. The server told us to look happier. Serena looked at me instead of the camera, which produced a smile no staged instruction could have created. The staff printed it and placed it beside the cake. Serena studied the photo longer than she meant to, then slipped it into her wallet instead of leaving it on the table. We looked like a real couple celebrating something intimate, which was exactly the image Adeline and I had been manufacturing with far less warmth. That comparison grew louder when I checked my phone. Adeline hadn't messaged me all day. Serena noticed because she had been tracking the gaps since our restaurant conversation began, and every quiet minute strengthened the theory forming in her head. Then she opened the cake box. 2 small figures stood on top, one with pink hair and one holding a game controller. Between them, icing spelled out 947 days. How do you argue with someone who remembers the exact day you became reliable? I asked what the number meant. Serena stared at me like I had insulted mathematics. It was the number of days since our friendship began, counted from the first afternoon she realized I would show up when I promised. She remembered rainy bus rides, exam weeks, late bakery stops, and archery practices. She also remembered the day I crossed town with a replacement bowstring and the week I left soup outside her door when she was sick. She remembered one stormy morning when I waited outside practice because she had once said she hated walking home alone. None of those acts had felt romantic while I was doing them. Serena had kept every piece, collecting ordinary time while I treated it like background. The server noticed the 947 and changed the celebration from birthday to anniversary without asking either of us. Serena didn't correct her, and the word anniversary made the table feel more intimate than our fake relationship ever had. I opened her gift and found a tiny arrow charm. Serena said it proved that even when I ran in the wrong direction, she could still find me. It cost less than Maeve's tickets or Fiona's savings, but it carried her whole strategy. She didn't need to own the road if she knew me well enough to follow. The joke nearly covered the fear in her voice. Later, over ice cream, I finally asked the question I had avoided since her confession. "What do you actually like about me?" Serena set down her spoon and said her love had built itself from smaller things. I remembered her food order, waited when practice ran late, answered messages at bad hours, and treated her worst moods like weather that would pass. None of those moments looked important alone. Together, they had made me the person she trusted most, and the rescue had only added one more memory to a pile already years deep. She counted because time with me had become the steadiest part of her life, and steady things deserved names. Then Serena admitted the fear hiding under every attack and joke. My rejection made her wonder whether I hated the closeness we already had. Losing the romance hurt, but losing the friendship would destroy her. I told her I did not hate her. Serena asked whether I could promise we would still reach 1,000 days as friends. I said yes before thinking about how close the number was. Her shoulders finally loosened because the promise gave her a future beside me even without the romantic answer she wanted. For a few seconds, the friendship was simply alive again. Then the archery menace reclaimed the room, took another spoonful of ice cream, and started presenting evidence against my fake relationship. Our supposed relationship had begun after one cafe meeting. Adeline and I barely messaged when apart. She needed an app to decide how couples behaved, and every public gesture looked carefully selected. Serena also knew I had spent 20 minutes choosing a birthday reply for a classmate I barely knew. If I had fallen in love, I would have overthought every message, lost sleep, and asked Serena for advice while pretending the question belonged to someone else. None of that had happened. She tapped the 947-day cake, looked me in the eye, and said it. "You're faking it." A server approached with the bill, heard the final line, and retreated before reaching the table. Serena's voice had changed from hopeful to certain. She no longer needed me to confess, she only wanted to see how badly I would defend the lie. I denied it, so Serena asked me to name Adeline's favorite dessert, the first book she loved, or where we had gone after becoming a couple. I had nothing to give her. She pointed at Adeline's silence and reminded me that the relationship began exactly when both of us needed shields. My face answered before my mouth did. Serena reached across and straightened my collar over the fading lipstick mark like a girlfriend. Her fingers paused on it long enough to show she could recognize every prop Adeline used and every weakness in the performance. Serena smiled through the remaining hurt. The archery menace had entered the date as a rejected friend and left holding the central secret of my campus life. She leaned across the table and took my ice cream spoon. "I won't expose you today," Serena said. "But I'm not giving up, Declan. Now I know where to aim." 2 days after Serena called out my fake relationship, my family spent an afternoon at Whitmore Springs, a large spa outside Maplehurst. Fiona live-streamed from the women's side with Tatum while I stayed near the mixed outdoor pools because home security had decided my destruction needed witnesses. I thought the camera was my only problem. During the stream, she asked whether I liked anyone. Tatum turned the camera toward herself and demanded a real answer on behalf of every woman who had visited our apartment. Fiona tried to reclaim the phone, and their struggle sent the livestream briefly toward the ceiling. I gave the safest answer available: I liked peace. Tatum, Fiona's dance teammate, leaned into the frame and mentioned that Fiona had been arriving late. Fiona tried to mute her, but Tatum kept talking while dodging the phone, disappearing after class, and guarding her phone. Fiona elbowed her out of view, but the report stayed with me. Home security had started running operations outside my knowledge. Then I saw pink hair near the far pool. Serena had come separately and was talking with a staff member about the bakery's event catering. She wore a pink robe over her swimsuit and looked relaxed for the first time since our restaurant confrontation. If Fiona spotted her, she would connect the bakery date, the messages, and the archery rescue before I could prepare one believable sentence. So I grabbed Serena by the wrist and pulled her into a nearby sauna. She demanded an explanation, and I covered her mouth when Fiona's voice passed outside the door, then whispered that my sister couldn't see us together. Serena's eyes narrowed because she had just earned proof that my relationship with Adeline was fake, and now I was hiding her like contraband. Her first instinct was to make the situation worse for entertainment. She tried to shout, so I kept my hand over her mouth. Serena's eyes promised revenge. She pointed at the sauna clock, then at Fiona's voice beyond the door, making it clear that my hiding plan had a time limit even before the danger became physical. I promised to explain after Fiona left. Serena licked my palm. I released her immediately, because the archery menace believed escalation was a love language. The sauna door stayed blocked while Fiona and Tatum talked outside, and the heat climbed until Serena's jokes slowed, and the color in her face changed. I called Fiona and told her a staff member needed help near the lobby. She complained, but the diversion pulled her away. But when I turned back, Serena had collapsed against the bench. I slapped the emergency switch, opened the door, and loosened her heavy outer robe so heat could escape. Then I carried her into the cooler bath area. Her breathing stayed shallow while I pressed a wet towel to her neck, called her name, and kept talking until her eyes opened. Serena's head rolled against my shoulder while I carried her, and the sight burned every joke out of me. The same woman who had chased me across campus and threatened me with a bow suddenly felt frighteningly light. For those seconds, Serena's safety erased the secret and every relationship label. She was my oldest friend, and I had trapped her somewhere dangerous because I was scared of a family argument. A spa attendant brought water and checked Serena's breathing. The attendant asked why we had stayed inside so long, and Serena looked at me before protecting the secret with a weak claim that the latch had jammed. Even half-conscious, she chose my family problem over easy blame. She finally focused on me and tried to joke that my rescue count had increased. I told her to save her breath. Serena touched my cheek, saw the fear I had failed to hide, and obeyed. The emergency was over, and my hiding plan had gone straight to hell. While that happened, Maeve saw Fiona's livestream from her office. The tile pattern and pool layout were instantly familiar. Maeve closed her laptop, grabbed her keys, and drove toward Whitmore Springs without telling anyone. She had watched Adeline and Serena collect my time all week. Now she had found the arena. I settled Serena on a bath chair behind a privacy screen and finally stepped into the warm outdoor pool. My body had barely relaxed when a folded paper boat floated across the water. Inside, Maeve had written, "Why haven't you come to see me, little bunny?" I looked up. Maeve stood near the opposite edge, wrapped in a white towel and smiling like the entire spa belonged to her. 2 employees had greeted her by name on arrival, but I was too busy hiding Serena to understand the status signal. At that point, I still didn't know how literal that expression was. I climbed out and joined her behind a stone divider. Maeve asked why Serena had been unconscious in my arms. Concern flashed before jealousy because she understood a real rescue had happened. I asked why she had driven across Maplehurst to track a livestream. She ignored my question and loosened the towel from one shoulder. The fabric slipped as I reached to catch it, and Maeve let it fall just far enough to reveal the swimsuit underneath. She had planned the fake wardrobe crisis from the moment she arrived. Maeve asked whether I was disappointed. I told her relief and disappointment could occupy the same nervous system. She laughed, moved closer, and started asking whether my fake girlfriend knew I spent spa afternoons rescuing other women. Then Fiona called my name from the path outside. There was nowhere to hide Maeve. The divider ended at the pool, the changing room was occupied, and Fiona was seconds away, so I pulled Maeve underwater with me. She wrapped her arms around my neck before I could signal for silence. My lungs started burning, and Maeve watched my face with delighted cruelty. When I pointed upward, she shook her head and tapped her lips. Maeve offered me air through a kiss. The white fox had found romance inside an emergency and immediately raised the price. I considered drowning with dignity for half a second. A hand grabbed my arm and hauled me to the surface. Being rescued from a near kiss by my fake girlfriend didn't come with a believable explanation, and I had none. Adeline had bought a day pass after a literature club errand that morning. She'd seen Maeve follow me behind the divider, then watched us disappear underwater, so the arms around my shoulders looked exactly as bad as they were. Adeline pulled me to the pool edge and asked why the student body president was attached to her boyfriend. Maeve surfaced beside us and claimed she had been showing me around the spa. Then she revealed that Whitmore Springs belonged to her family. That explained the recognition, the sudden arrival, and the confidence of a woman who had just turned the property into a private flirtation zone. Maeve took my wrist and said the tour was continuing. Adeline took my other hand. Declan came with me, Adeline said. He's my boyfriend. Adeline told Maeve to release her boyfriend. Maeve answered that Adeline had released him to 3 other women all week. Their voices stayed low, but the grip on each wrist became a full argument. The 2 women pulled in opposite directions. A nearby spa employee recognized Maeve and prepared to ask whether she needed help, then saw Adeline's grip and wisely changed direction. The conflict had outranked customer service. Maeve's smile stayed beautiful while her patience died. Adeline's voice remained flat while her grip tightened. I was caught between a fake girlfriend defending a role and a real confession hiding inside a joke. Then Maeve spotted a pink bush moving near the pool. The bush had Serena's eyes. Serena had recovered enough to wrap herself in a pink towel and hide behind decorative plants while spying on us. She had heard Adeline claim the girlfriend role and decided recovery could wait until she knew how Maeve answered. When I called her name, she stood up and admitted it immediately. Subtlety had never been part of her skill set. Adeline explained that she had already intercepted Fiona near the pool entrance. Fiona had asked where I was, and Adeline said I was helping staff with a guest who had overheated. The real emergency made the explanation believable and gave us a few minutes. Then Adeline asked whether I knew a reliable printer for the literature club. Maeve stared at her while Serena stared at both of them, and I asked why a printing problem had entered the pool war. Adeline said, club deadlines remained active during romantic conflict. I tried to end the conversation and returned to Fiona before her suspicion recovered. Serena grabbed my ankle and pulled me toward Adeline. Adeline caught my shoulders. Maeve caught the waistband of my swim trunks before I slid completely into the pool, and every person involved started pulling in a different direction. Fiona arrived at that exact moment. She saw Adeline holding my upper body, Maeve gripping my trunks, and Serena wrapped in a pink towel at my feet. Nobody had a sentence strong enough for that image. Fiona looked at Adeline first because she held the girlfriend title. Then she looked at Serena, the best friend who had supposedly accepted rejection, and finally at Maeve, whose hand was still locked around my waistband. Her sweet smile began right there, built from 3 contradictions she intended to investigate. Serena asked Fiona to let her explain. Maeve spoke at the same time. Adeline tried to maintain the staff emergency story. 3 explanations collided before any one of them reached a complete sentence. Serena lost her grip, Maeve's foot slipped, Adeline tried to steady me, and the 4 of us crashed into the hot spring together. Splash. Water hit Fiona from the splash. The spa attendant from Serena's rescue hurried over, recognized the same group creating a second emergency, and stopped with both towels raised. Fiona stood at the edge, soaked from the knees down, and smiled with terrifying sweetness. Fiona smiled all the way home. The next time I saw that same smile, she had Adeline alone at a cafe and a plan that could wreck my family. The morning after the hot spring pileup, Fiona served me breakfast, wished me a pleasant day, and asked 0 questions about the 3 women attached to my body in one pool. A silent home security was worse than an angry one, and you know it. That sweetness scared me more than yelling. She even packed me lunch and reminded me to take an umbrella. Fiona only became that helpful when anger had passed through fire and reached strategy. Tatum had already mentioned Fiona's disappearances after class. Now home security was calm because she had stopped gathering emotions and started gathering evidence. I left the apartment knowing my sister was planning something, though the shape of it stayed hidden. Adeline met me outside a studio in downtown Maplehurst. She had finished a modeling commitment and wore an embroidered formal dress with a fitted coat over it. The outfit was elegant enough to make me forget the hot spring interrogation for several dangerous seconds. A photographer leaving the studio asked whether I was the boyfriend joining the next set. Adeline answered yes before I could separate our fake role from the modeling job, and the photographer nodded like the pairing made obvious visual sense. Adeline noticed the pause and asked, "Are you staring?" I told her I was assessing whether walking beside her would create another campus rumor. She adjusted one sleeve and replied, "Then assess carefully." The campus queen had learned how to flirt, and she was already using it like a newly discovered tool. We were heading to a print shop because the literature club needed booklets for an event. While I looked at her instead of the traffic light, I stepped off the curb too early. Adeline grabbed my coat and pulled me back. A delivery van passed close enough to move the edge of her dress. I turned, she was still holding my collar, and our faces stopped inches apart. Neither of us moved immediately. A woman waiting at the curb glanced at us, smiled, and looked away to give the supposed couple privacy. The outside reaction made retreat feel more awkward, so we stayed there one heartbeat longer than safety required. Adeline's pulse jumped, and mine answered immediately. The fake relationship had created dozens of staged moments, but that near kiss came from fear and instinct, which made it feel more real than the lipstick mark. And then the crossing signal changed, a driver behind us honked, and romance lost to traffic before either of us moved closer. At the print shop, the owner quoted Adeline almost triple the normal price and promised delivery after her event. He had looked at one quiet woman holding club paperwork and decided she would pay to avoid a fight. Adeline started choosing which subscriptions to cut, so I asked her to wait outside. I removed my jacket, borrowed a cap and reading glasses, then came back claiming to represent a monthly campus order. I requested the same paper, same quantity, and same deadline. Suddenly the price dropped, delivery moved 2 days earlier, and free binding appeared out of nowhere because he thought I represented repeat business. The employee beside him recognized my voice before the owner did. She looked through the window at Adeline, then turned both handwritten quotes outward so the numbers sat side by side. I took off the glasses. His smile vanished. I told him Adeline's club could bring a recurring order every month, plus referrals from other campus groups. He could keep the inflated one-time sale and lose the steady business, or honor the honest quote and earn all of it. His apology arrived at record speed. He matched the lower price, moved the deadline, and started calling me sir. When he tried to call the first quote a clerical error, his own employee looked at the handwritten number and refused to support the lie. Adeline walked in while he handed over the corrected invoice. The man found one hell of a respectful tone once repeat business appeared, and she watched the entire status flip with open admiration. Her expression hit harder than the discount. I told her negotiation was mostly giving greedy people a better way to be greedy, and Adeline said competence was attractive. Then she realized she had said it aloud. I let the silence sit for a moment. 2 women joined us outside. Colette Dawson was a literature club alum and Adeline's protective friend. Bridget Carlyle was in a medical program, equally protective and physically incapable of respecting personal space. Adeline had already briefed them that I was helping as her fake boyfriend and possible club member, which explained how they knew my role without stealing narrator knowledge. Bridget grabbed my wrist to check my pulse after the traffic scare and started asking about sleep, stress, and whether Adeline had been feeding me properly. Colette pulled her away by the collar before the examination became a public event. Colette asked what I thought of Adeline. Bridget stopped joking long enough to listen, which told me the answer mattered to both of them. They had watched Adeline treat relationships like formal appointments for years, and they wanted to know whether I saw the person beneath the posture. I said she was direct, reliable, and much kinder than her reputation suggested. Bridget watched Adeline's face brighten and immediately began making wedding jokes. Colette shut those down too, then told me that Adeline trusted very few people and should not be treated like a temporary prop. She was entrusting her friend to me even while knowing the relationship began as an agreement. After they left, Adeline asked what love felt like. I told her love was when I started saving someone a seat, carrying their problems into my schedule, and noticing the first morning their message didn't come. The answer came too close to Serena, Maeve, Fiona, and the girl who had left, so I stopped there. Adeline processed it, then said a girlfriend should be able to make a cute expression. She lifted both hands near her face, tried a small smile, and apologized before holding it for 2 seconds. The expression was stiff at first, then she saw me trying not to grin and relaxed into something genuinely warm. The expression worked, and I told her so. Adeline's ears turned pink, and the formal campus queen spent the next block avoiding my eyes. Across the street, Fiona watched from behind a cafe window, tightening both hands around a drink she never touched. She had followed us long enough to see the traffic rescue, the print shop reversal, and Adeline's failed attempt at being cute. Every scene made the relationship look more sincere, which pushed Fiona toward a choice she still believed was protection. That afternoon, my mother called and asked me to pick up a jackfruit from a specialty market across town. The request made no sense, but Fiona had suggested the errand and promised to handle dinner while I was gone. I reached the market, called home, and heard a coffee grinder behind Fiona's voice. She claimed she was in the kitchen. Our kitchen didn't own a commercial grinder or play jazz through ceiling speakers, so I left the jackfruit where it belonged and followed the sound clue to the cafe near campus. Fiona was seated across from Adeline. I arrived before either noticed me. Fiona had rehearsed the conversation for hours. She explained that I had always claimed to dislike romance, so Adeline's sudden relationship had to be a mistake. Then she asked Adeline to break up with me. Adeline listened without interrupting as Fiona placed a bank card on the table. Adeline looked at the card without touching it. She knew the relationship was fake, so taking offense would have protected her pride at Fiona's expense. She chose to hear the fear beneath the insult. Adeline asked Fiona whether the money was meant as an insult or an offer. Fiona said it was protection. Her voice stayed steady, but both hands were clenched beneath the table. $10,000. What do you even say when your sister prices your fake breakup at 10 grand? Fiona had built it from saved allowance, dance prizes, and every small amount she had refused to spend. The secret savings from the mall finally had a purpose. She was trying to buy my girlfriend away. The card sat between them, and the joke died before it could form. Fiona was terrified that I would build a life where she no longer mattered. She had watched Serena chase me, Maeve claim me, and Adeline hold the official title. Instead of admitting the fear, she had converted it into a number large enough to feel like control. I stepped beside the table. Adeline met my eyes first and gave no sign of anger, which kept the confrontation from becoming a public attack on Fiona. The barista nearby recognized the amount from their conversation and quietly moved away, understanding that the table was now a family crisis. Fiona saw me, looked at the card, and ran. Her chair scraped across the floor, the bank card spun once on the table, and every rehearsed line disappeared. The confidence of a planner survived until the person she feared losing entered the room. Adeline and I chased her through the park to an old playground near our childhood apartment. Fiona stopped beside the swings because that was where she used to wait for me after school, and I let her speak. Fiona stood with both hands around the swing chain, unable to look at me. The playground had once been the place where she waited for me every afternoon, so choosing it for the confession stripped away every adult excuse. She admitted following us, reading campus rumors, asking Tatum questions, and arranging the fruit errand through our mother. Each step had made the next one easier. A glance at the forum became following us once. Following us once became a cafe meeting with money on the table. She admitted the bribe too. Her voice broke when she explained that every girl around me seemed capable of taking a place she had always believed was permanent. I sat beside her on the swing. There was no anger left in me. Fiona had crossed a line, and she knew it, but the line came from fear she had never learned to say aloud. I asked Fiona whether she truly believed I would stop coming home because a woman held my hand. She admitted the fear sounded stupid when spoken aloud, yet the hot spring image had made every rival look like a separate door leading away from her. I told her family did not disappear because I dated someone. She would always be my sister, and no girlfriend could purchase or replace that history. The truth came out. Adeline and I were faking the relationship. Fiona stared at me through wet eyes. Fiona asked whether the kiss mark, the hand-holding, and the near kiss had all been fake. I answered that some actions were staged and some reactions were harder to label. Adeline heard that distinction, went quiet, and confirmed the agreement. It deterred admirers, the public affection was mostly staged, and the end date had never been fixed. Fiona hit my shoulder for letting her spend 3 days planning a $10,000 operation against a fake girlfriend. I told her the only part I could never forgive was the jackfruit. Fiona laughed. Then she hugged me hard enough to pull me off the swing. Adeline stood nearby and watched the siblings repair what secrecy had damaged. She left the card alone and treated Fiona's fear seriously. That restraint gave Fiona a reason to trust her beyond the fake title. When we finally left the playground, Fiona took back the bank card and walked between us. Then she asked the question neither Adeline nor I could answer. Fiona asked, "How long are you two going to keep pretending?" Back at Silverbrook, the 2 fake tattoo guys had completed their transformation from failed intimidators into unpaid gossip correspondents. They found me before a campus-wide cooking class and warned that I would have to choose between Serena and Maeve. How did my failed intimidators become my best campus news source? Bad luck, mostly. I asked why Adeline, my public girlfriend, had vanished from the prediction. The taller guy explained that official relationships were boring. The 2 women holding grudges were the real danger. His friend nodded with the grave authority of a man who had once cried because Adeline held my arm. The cooking instructor needed student government help splitting several classes between rooms. Maeve volunteered the grouping method, shuffled the lists with suspicious enthusiasm, and placed both herself and Serena in my room. When teams formed, my two new gossip friends sprinted toward Maeve and Serena. Both women looked past them and called my name. The instructor saw 3 unclaimed students and solved the issue by placing Maeve, Serena, and me together. Several classmates immediately switched stations to watch. Serena was the archery champion, Maeve was the student body president, and I was the idiot standing between them with a cutting board. The guys stared at me with betrayed expressions. One mouthed that I was stealing national resources. I pointed at the knives in Serena's and Maeve's hands. My so-called luck came with 2 blades and exactly 0 safe answers. While we prepared ingredients, the 2 classmates started asking which woman I preferred. Serena chopped peppers beside my left shoulder. Maeve sliced vegetables on my right with elegant precision. I praised Serena's honesty, loyalty, and athletic skill until her knife slowed. Then I praised Maeve's intelligence, confidence, and ability to turn any room into her territory, and Maeve's smile returned. The classmates asked which one was prettier. I told them the kitchen had 2 exits and neither was close enough. Serena raised the knife slightly. Maeve asked me to answer the question. I declared that each woman had a completely different kind of beauty, and that forcing a comparison would insult art, fairness, and my remaining lifespan. Both accepted the answer, and the classmates wrote it down like survival advice. A woman at the next station whispered that dating Adeline had made me fearless. Her partner corrected her. Fear was clearly the reason I was suddenly diplomatic. Maeve opened a bottle of citrus soda developed by my father's agricultural research team. Silverbrook had received sample cases for a campus event, which gave her a legitimate reason to possess it. She offered Serena a taste and watched closely. Maeve had already asked Gwen where the sample came from, so she knew it connected directly to my family. The drink was a test, disguised as hospitality. Serena loved the drink because my father used to send cans home during our first year of friendship. She took Maeve's cup without thinking, drank from the same rim, and started praising the flavor. Maeve's eyes sharpened. Gwen had told her about Serena's confession, and Serena's comfort with my family products confirmed how deeply she was woven into my life. The shared cup also created a weird 2-second ceasefire. One classmate raised his phone for a picture, then lowered it when both women looked at him. Their rivalry had generated its own privacy policy. Both women realized how intimate the gesture looked, then blamed the soda instead of acknowledging it. Maeve asked how long Serena had known me. Serena answered almost 3 years and started listing habits. I hated waking early, forgot umbrellas, overcooked eggs, and pretended not to care while remembering everyone's schedules. Maeve countered with her own list from student government. I hid snacks in the bottom desk drawer, reorganized files when anxious, and always checked whether she had eaten before leaving. I stood between them while 2 women compared ownership records on my personality. Serena owned the long history. Maeve owned the daily access. Each detail made Adeline's 2-week timeline look thinner, and Maeve was doing the math in real time. Then Maeve brought up Adeline. She asked whether a rejected admirer should give up once the target dated someone else. Serena said rejection only ended pursuit when the feeling itself died or the target demanded complete distance. She had promised to preserve our friendship, and she refused to disappear because a suspiciously convenient girlfriend appeared overnight. Maeve asked whether Serena had confessed directly. Serena admitted it. She added that I had rejected her by claiming I loved Adeline, and Maeve's knife stopped above the cutting board. The exact sequence mattered more than the confession itself. That confirmed Gwen's rumor, and Maeve started comparing dates. Serena's confession came first, my claim about Adeline followed, and Adeline's relationship began almost immediately. The White Fox had enough pieces, but she held the final conclusion back while testing the rest. With 10 minutes left, the instructor demanded plated food. The countdown forced everyone to stop talking and act, which should have reduced the rivalry. Instead, both women treated my cooking as the fastest available territory. Serena grabbed the dish I had been preparing and arranged it beside hers for a couple photo. Then she tasted her own sauce and discovered she had added enough chili to punish a small town. She refused to admit defeat. Instead, Serena ordered me to feed her so she could claim the flavor improved through romance. I held out a spoon. She ate it, smiled through tears, and insisted the sauce was excellent while her face turned red. Bryn, Serena's class representative, passed our station and destroyed the performance. She revealed that Serena had arranged the class note delivery weeks earlier specifically to send me to her house. Serena choked on the spicy food. Bryn slapped her back while announcing that the entire visit had been Serena's idea, including the choice to miss class long enough for concern to become unavoidable. Serena tried to deny the final detail and failed under Bryn's stare. Maeve looked delighted. The home visit had been a Serena operation, which confirmed that the archery menace's pursuit involved planning beneath the chaos. Then, Maeve presented a boiled egg on a plate and called it a dragon egg. I asked what made it a dragon egg. Maeve said the chef's confidence. She threatened to feed it to me mouth to mouth if I kept questioning the menu, then stole my finished dish and photographed herself holding it. Her caption offered me an 18-year cooking contract with benefits negotiable after marriage. Food was war. My actual contribution had been seized by both armies, and what would you call two women fighting over a boiled egg besides a hostage situation? At the classroom door, Adeline watched the entire scene. She had come to find me, but seeing Serena feed from my hand and Maeve claim my cooking stopped her. She recorded a few seconds because the fake relationship's instability was evidence she needed for the coming conversation with Maeve. Adeline's expression changed when Maeve lifted my dish for the photograph. Serena's feeding could be dismissed as old friendship. Maeve's caption read like a claim on my future. Adeline lowered the phone after recording, and Maeve noticed her watching before moving to the final test. She asked how long Adeline and I had known each other before dating. I said a short time. Maeve asked how many private dates we had shared, what gift I had chosen for Adeline, and why Serena could describe 3 years of my life while my supposed girlfriend still treated affection like a scheduled exercise. I tried to cut vegetables while answering. Maeve stepped behind me, guided my wrist, and whispered the timeline beside my ear. Serena had confessed first, which gave my lie a clear trigger. I named Adeline minutes later, and her immediate proposal completed the suspicious timeline. Public proof appeared before private closeness. Maeve asked one last question. Why had I claimed to love Adeline only minutes after Serena confessed? I had no answer that preserved the story. Maeve finally smiled and said, "You two are faking it. We were cooked, and my knife slipped hard enough to nick my finger." Maeve caught my hand before I could pull away, pressed the cut briefly to her lips, and wrapped it with the pink ribbon she'd once wanted me to tie for her. Maeve moved fast enough that the two gossip guys stopped whispering. Bryn looked from Serena to Adeline. Gwen, watching from the doorway, understood that Maeve had converted deduction into a visible mark without exposing the secret aloud. Serena stared at the ribbon. The long history gave her memories, but Maeve had just created a fresh, intimate symbol in front of everyone. Adeline stood in the doorway with her phone lowered. Maeve had taken a small injury and turned it into a public claim. Then she made me promise to visit her house Saturday for the tourism assignment. She held the ribbon knot until I agreed. Maeve now knew the central secret, and she chose private control over public exposure. That evening, Fiona saw the pink ribbon on my finger and began another interrogation. I prepared for questions about Maeve, but her real outrage was simpler. I had cooked for 2 women and brought nothing home. Home security considered unequal dinner service a family betrayal, so I cooked for her. Fiona sat on the counter and supervised, asking whether Serena preferred spicy food and whether Maeve had touched the same spoon. Every question pretended to concern hygiene. Every answer adjusted her mental map of the rivalry. Fiona took one bite, forgave the entire harem crisis for the length of the meal, and claimed permanent first rights to future dishes. Food was war at school and treaty law at home. After dinner, Adeline messaged me. She wanted a formal meeting with Maeve about letting me participate in the literature club. She knew Maeve would block her if I stayed silent, and she wanted me present, so I agreed. Adeline's repeated questions about love, the traffic rescue, and the cute expression had stopped feeling like pure research. Her request to confront Maeve also carried risk. Losing the club fight could expose how much she wanted me nearby. Something deeper was growing, and I needed context before Maeve forced it into the open. The next afternoon, I found Colette and Bridget on the volleyball court. Adeline's 2 trusted friends made me play while they explained her past, mainly because Bridget thought emotional honesty improved when a ball was flying at your face. Colette served hard enough to sting my forearms, then told me Adeline's parents had always loved her fiercely. She had never lacked care, money, or attention. What she lacked was the freedom to make an ordinary social mistake, return the next day, and discover that her friends still wanted her there. Her father's diplomatic work kept moving the family, while her mother's writing career kept home life controlled and private. They protected Adeline from every risk they could see, including the small awkward risks that teach a person how friendship survives embarrassment. Bridget spiked the next ball and added the ugly part. Every new school rewarded Adeline's grades, filled her hallway with admirers, and reset every relationship before closeness became routine. She learned how to impress a room, then left before trust had time to become ordinary. People called her cold because formal language was the only social armor she got to keep. I returned the ball and remembered the romance app, the measured hand-holding, the apology after she tried to look cute, and the way she checked every boundary after copying a romantic gesture. Colette served again. Fake dating gave Adeline rules she could trust: schedule the walk, plan the touch, announce the relationship, and stop if either person crossed a line. A contract let her practice closeness without asking someone to accept the vulnerable version of her first. Asking whether a person would stay after the awkward part required trust she had never been allowed to practice. So the tea, the lipstick mark, the traffic rescue, and the near kiss had become real practice. Adeline was learning what happened when the person beside her stayed after the assignment ended. Bridget fired the final ball hard enough to knock me backward, and Colette caught it before giving me one warning. Maeve fights loudly, while Adeline asks once, "Don't make her ask alone." The next lunch at Silverbrook, I finally understood why Adeline treated affection like homework. Maeve chose that exact day to weaponize student government against her in public. The trouble started before we reached the cafeteria. Maeve stole my Coke in the hallway, took a long drink, and held the can behind her back. I grabbed her wrist as she stepped backward until her shoulders touched the wall. Then Maeve looked up at me with a smile designed to erase good judgment. "Careful, little bunny," Maeve murmured. "Someone might think you corner women for drinks." I planted one hand beside her head and reached for the can with the other. Maeve let me hold her wrist, enjoying the position far more than the theft required. For a second, the hallway went quiet around us. Maeve's eyes dropped to my mouth. My own brain took an unscheduled break. The can burst. Dark soda sprayed across Maeve's skirt and the front of my shirt. She stared down at the stain, then at me, and decided the disaster was my fault because I had applied romantic pressure to a carbonated object. Maeve refused to walk into the cafeteria with the stain visible, so she pressed her back against mine and made us move together. I walked forward while she walked backward. Every turn required negotiations, and 2 passing students recorded enough footage to destroy any claim that we were behaving normally. We entered the packed cafeteria back-to-back like a failed dance team, and Serena arrived in a white bunny coat, took one look at our formation, and demanded an explanation. Adeline had already claimed the seats beside my 2 gossip friends who surrendered them the moment the campus queen looked over. Maeve sat across from her with Gwen at her side. All 3 women faced one another around me. 3 women were feeding me by force. Would any sane person call that peaceful? The fake tattoo guys moved to a nearby table and watched with the reverence of sports fans who had received front row seats. Half the damn cafeteria recognized the lineup within seconds. A table of literature club members watched Adeline take my side. Several student government volunteers watched Maeve claim the opposite side. Serena's archery teammates began messaging before she had removed her coat. My quiet college life was now public programming. Adeline asked why Maeve was attached to my back. Maeve replied that student government teamwork required trust. Serena opened her coat, sat beside me, and announced that archery required better balance. Then she hooked one arm around mine to demonstrate. Gwen lowered her drink and accepted that lunch was now a territorial summit. She had spent months helping Maeve secure private time, yet even she had never seen all 3 claimants move openly in one room. Her role shifted from wingwoman to damage control. Maeve started with club funding. She said student government might need to dissolve an underperforming club beginning with the letter L. Adeline knew she meant literature. She picked up a fry, held it to my mouth, and calmly asked whether I wanted salt. I ate it because refusing would look suspicious, and Maeve's smile tightened. She immediately clarified that the threatened club was an entirely fictional love research club teaching women to steal vice presidents. A student at the next table checked the club directory on his phone. No such club existed. The policy threat had exposed itself as jealousy before Maeve finished chewing. Adeline's club secretary, sitting 2 tables away, relaxed when the target changed. Maeve saw that relief and realized her personal attack had frightened people who depended on the club, but jealousy still kept her from backing down cleanly. Serena copied Adeline by selecting a piece of food she hated, held it to my mouth, and ordered me to eat because feeding people was now the new girlfriend rule. I accepted the bite, and Serena looked satisfied until she remembered she disliked the same food and had to swallow her own pride along with it. Then she picked up a small balloon decoration from a campus event and pressed one finger against it. Serena explained that a balloon could look full and perfect while holding only air. One sharp point would tell everyone what it was made of. Her eyes stayed on Adeline, and the warning was clear. Serena knew the relationship was fake and could puncture it whenever she chose. Adeline understood that Serena knew something. She looked at me for confirmation, and my hesitation told her the secret had spread farther than I had admitted. Maeve already knew the whole answer. The campus queen sat between 2 women holding the same secret from different directions, and her hand tightened around the fry carton. Maeve slid one leg around mine under the table. She started threatening unapproved campus businesses, unauthorized club sales, and couples who misused student government rooms. Every example sounded official and ended with me spending less time beside Adeline. I told Maeve the policy code didn't include personal jealousy. Maeve pressed her shoe against my ankle. "Then stop making me draft amendments." Adeline set down her food and addressed Maeve directly. She wanted me approved as a regular literature club participant because I was already helping with printing and events. Maeve heard a request for access and treated it like a declaration of war. She replied that I had student government obligations, including a large tourism project the dean had assigned. The project needed research, illustrations, and weekend work, which meant my schedule belonged to her office. Adeline asked when the assignment had appeared. Maeve said the timing was confidential. Gwen coughed into her drink because even she knew that was nonsense. After lunch, the four of us went to the student government office. The fake tattoo guys followed until Gwen asked whether they had official business, and they disappeared so fast even Maeve laughed. Adeline waited in the hall while Maeve, Gwen, and I asked the dean to drop the tourism assignment. The dean refused in one sentence and ordered us to finish it. Maeve had already won the human fight at lunch. The dean's order only locked my weekend to her office. Once the dean left, Maeve lifted the pink ribbon still wrapped around my finger and said the real plan would be explained at her house Saturday. Adeline heard the invitation from the doorway. She stayed composed, but she knew Maeve had used the fake relationship secret to secure private time she couldn't challenge publicly. Saturday morning, Gwen arrived at my apartment carrying a suit bag and a bouquet. Little Tangerine had decided a tourism work session required romantic styling. She had brought 3 ties, tested 2 bouquets, and rejected my normal jacket because it looked too much like I intended to complete actual work. She buttoned my jacket, corrected my hair, and described the scene she wanted at Maeve's door: flowers, confession, stunned silence, then a kiss, while the project documents remained unopened forever. I rejected every part after flowers. Gwen handed me the bouquet anyway. Maeve liked flowers, and arriving empty-handed after accepting a private invitation would look careless. That logic was strong enough to hide the wingwoman operation. So I reached Maeve's house wearing a suit and holding a bouquet like a man about to propose to student government administration. A motorcycle roared into the driveway before I reached the door. The rider stopped beside me, removed her helmet, and demanded to know whether Maeve Sinclair was inside. She claimed Maeve's family owed money and said she had come to seize Maeve herself as payment. The performance felt theatrical, but the threat was physical enough. She stepped toward the house and I blocked her path. Would you step between a biker and the woman who kept claiming you as her date? I did, because self-preservation had already left. The rider circled the bouquet with one boot and mocked Maeve for sending a student to defend her. I picked the flowers up, set them safely beside the wall, and moved back into her path. The rider asked whether I wanted to be included in the debt collection. I told her Maeve was not property and she would not enter until she explained the claim. She shoved me, and I stayed in front. Then she swept my leg and knocked me onto the driveway. Maeve opened the door at that moment and saw me rise again between her and the stranger. Watching me intervene before knowing the truth cracked through every teasing defense she carried. Maeve shouted for me to stop. I charged once more. The rider caught my wrist, laughed, and finally announced that the debt story was fake. Her name was Danica Sinclair. She was Maeve's 23-year-old cousin, an acting student with a motorcycle, a talent for chaos, and the exact family permission required to make Maeve furious. Danica earned the drama cousin label by staging the entire scene as a test. She wanted to know whether Maeve's visitor would protect her without family status, money, or a romantic reward on display. My scraped palm and the flowers beside the wall answered before any introduction could. I looked at Maeve. Maeve looked at the bouquet, and Danica looked between us before deciding the test had produced excellent results. Inside, Maeve trapped Danica against the kitchen counter with a knife held safely above the cutting board. She demanded an apology for knocking me down. Danica apologized to me while grinning at Maeve. She also inspected the scrape on my palm and admitted she had expected me to step aside after the first shove. Maeve heard that and tightened her grip on the knife handle, because the test had risked someone she cared about. Danica then revealed that Maeve had skipped a family dinner after mentioning a visitor, so Danica came to investigate the suspected boyfriend. I video called Gwen to prove the visit was work-related. She answered by asking whether Maeve had accepted the flowers and whether I'd confessed yet. Maeve covered her face. The suit, bouquet, Gwen's question, and unopened work folders made the visit look exactly like a date, so Danica leaned into the camera and thanked Little Tangerine for confirming the operation. Danica claimed she had only stopped by to use the pool. She followed Maeve into the changing room, teased her about bringing me home, and asked whether the white fox planned to flirt until graduation. Maeve denied everything while changing. Danica stole the spare swim bottom Maeve had placed on the bench, slipped outside, and locked the changing room door. Maeve remained fully covered inside with a robe and top, but she couldn't enter the pool without the missing piece. Danica joined me by the water in a bright swimsuit and waved a phone containing childhood photos of Maeve. She offered the photos if I rode the backyard water slide with her. Danica was attractive, confident, and clearly enjoying the family interrogation. But she was Maeve's cousin and had come to investigate me, so I kept my attention on the phone full of childhood blackmail. Maeve already owned my Lord of the Moon evidence, so childhood photos were the first fair counterweapon anyone had offered me. I agreed immediately because childhood photos of the white fox had serious defensive value. Danica sat behind me on the slide and asked what I liked about Maeve. I said she was infuriating, loyal, brilliant, manipulative, and more vulnerable than she wanted anyone to know. That answer told Danica everything. I had described Maeve with irritation, detail, and loyalty, listing defenses no casual coworker would ever notice. Danica pocketed the phone and stopped asking whether the connection was real. Maeve escaped the changing room in a secured wrap and saw us at the top of the slide. She shouted for us to stop, climbed the steps too fast, and stepped onto the wet platform. Her foot slipped. Maeve crashed into us, and all three of us shot down the slide together. We hit the pool in a tangled wave. Danica's swimsuit top came loose and landed across my face. She covered herself with a towel immediately while I turned away and handed the top back without looking. Maeve surfaced ready to commit a family crime. Danica laughed until she noticed Maeve's expression had changed. The pool chaos left us sitting beside the water while Danica secured the strap. She stared at an old childhood photo on her phone, and the performance finally left her voice. Years earlier, Danica had loved a reckless boy she teased, challenged, and embarrassed because provoking him felt safer than admitting she wanted him close. She kept assuming there would be another day to say the honest thing, so she never confessed before graduation pulled them apart. Years later, she saw him at an airport before he noticed her. Danica had enough time to walk away and preserve the old fantasy, but she approached anyway. He introduced the woman beside him, looking happy, and every sentence Danica had delayed became useless at once. She smiled, congratulated them, and left before he could see what the missed chance had cost her. There was no joke in that memory. Danica had built an acting career around saying lines other people wrote, while the one sentence that belonged to her stayed trapped until nobody needed to hear it. Danica looked straight at Maeve. "You do the same thing. You tease the boy you like, make him chase the meaning, and keep assuming there'll be another chance. There might not be." Maeve stopped arguing for the first time all day. Her hand moved to the fox purse beside her, a gift she had kept from our earlier outing, and Danica saw the warning hit exactly where she intended. The button in Maeve's drawer, the purse, the private invitation, and the portrait paper waiting inside all came from the same feeling. She'd kept turning confession into evidence and expecting me to assemble it, while Danica had just shown her what waiting could cost. I stayed quiet because Maeve needed room to hear the warning without another target for defense. Danica respected the silence and stopped teasing too. For 1 minute beside the pool, all three of us let the ugly possibility sit there. A feeling could stay real and still arrive too late. Maeve had already confessed once by accident, and every joke afterward delayed the answer again. Then Danica left us to finish the tourism project. Inside, Maeve sat beside me at the dining table with illustration paper spread between us. She was supposed to draw local attractions, but she sketched my face, so I asked how my head promoted Maplehurst tourism. Maeve said visitors enjoyed beautiful landmarks. Her teasing had returned, but neither of us had forgotten Danica's warning. Maeve touched my cheek to compare the angle, and the portrait carried details Gwen's makeover had missed. The crease beside my eye, one uneven strand of hair, and the expression I made whenever she pushed too far. The portrait looked more careful than anything in the actual project. Maeve had been studying me for months while pretending the attention was a game, and now the evidence sat between us in pencil instead of another joke. Maeve turned the page toward me and asked whether I recognized the expression. I said it was the face I made whenever she abused student government authority. She corrected me. It was the face I made when I wanted to argue but stayed anyway. That answer hit harder than the landmark joke. Her thumb remained against my cheek, and neither of us pretended the touch belonged to the project. I looked at the drawing again. She had made my annoyed expression softer than I remembered because that was how she saw it. Maeve had spent months memorizing the small things I never noticed about myself, then hiding the attention behind coffee, buttons, purses, and fake policy threats. Now the white fox had run out of cover except one unfinished portrait. For once, she didn't fill the silence with another joke. By evening, both of us were hungry. Maeve asked me to cook. I remembered Fiona's permanent family rule that I was forbidden from cooking for bad girls who stole me away from home, so I refused. Maeve placed the portrait between us and smiled slowly. "Then let's make a bet." I looked at the unfinished project, the bouquet on her counter, and the white fox waiting across from me. I asked, "What are the terms?" I had started with one goal, a peaceful college life. Now I had 3 women, 1 fake relationship, and a cooking bet with no terms. Every escape had opened another door, and for once, I'd asked what was behind it instead of running.